Well, we get it rolling on the Krueg Show after day one of the NFL draft is now officially in the books. 1 round in, 6 rounds to go. Rounds 2 and 3 coming up tomorrow. Thanks for joining the Pig and a Pickle Krueg Show. I am Larry Krueger. Give the band the rest of the night off. Brought to you by, of course, Pig and a Pickle. Check them out in Corte Madera and Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they are open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. So if you're like me and you live out in the East Bay, get your barbecue out in the East Bay in Emeryville, inside the Emeryville Public Marketplace, or otherwise check them out any day of the week in Marin County. And if you're from out of town, when you come to the Bay Area and you're looking for awesome barbecue, make sure you check out Pig and a Pickle. All right, thanks for Pig and a Pickle being a proud sponsor of the Krueg Show. Interesting first round, guys. And by the way, we are planning to our guest is like, is it video? Yes, it is video. Video and audio. How about that? But our guest is going to be Alex Barbour, potentially. I don't know. We booked Alex Barbour, a creator, analyst, host of Hail Mary Sports, who covers a lot of the NFL draft. He kind of reached out to me and said, hey, man, I cover the draft. I watch your show. I'd love to be on. And so I said, you know what? You're on, kid, tonight after round 1. So we'll visit with him if he jumps into the green room. But I did put the link in the chat, so we will take some video calls. What'd you think of what your favorite team did? I mean, I would imagine most of the people that follow me are Niner fans, but not everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people who are just big NFL fans, and they watched me on YouTube, and I'm a Niner fan, but they're not Niner fans. So what'd you think about how your team did? We'll get into the 49ers. Of course, they didn't do anything tonight that I noticed. If anybody else saw something that they did do, feel free to let us know. But I didn't see them do anything tonight of any note as far as no trade into the first round. Wasn't expecting a trade into the first round. Kind of expected after John Lynch said last Monday that that it was going to be Monday was going to be or day one, I should say, Thursday today was going to be sleepy. It was not going to be a big day for the 49ers. After they made the Lance and McCaffrey deals, they had no picks. So they don't pick until 99, and it's going to be a long wait, or is it? We'll find out tomorrow. But let's talk a little bit about this draft. And then we'll get into some thoughts on the 49ers and what tonight means from their perspective. But it all got started with the Carolina Panthers taking Bryce Young. And I don't know what you guys think of Bryce Young, but he looked awesome at Alabama, but he's tiny. He's 5'10" and 204 pounds. And right out of the chute, it's like you got to ask yourself, because Chicago had that pick, and Chicago could have gone with Bryce Young and traded Justin Fields. Instead, they said, you know what, we're going to stay with Justin Fields and trade Bryce Young. Now, Fields is a dynamic runner and at times has shown some huge, huge talent. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Bryce Young is a more refined passer. And we'll see. We'll see. I mean, those guys' careers are now going to be linked for years to come because Chicago passed on the ability to draft Bryce Young and chose to stay with Justin Fields and then traded with Carolina and Scott Fitterer. There were some reports late in the afternoon today that the Panthers were going to go with Will Levis over Bryce Young and that they hadn't met with Bryce Young since their workout with him. And then Will Levis wound up not going at all in the first round, and you got to kind of wonder about some of those pictures that he put out where he's posing and that kind of thing, if that impacted his situation or if it was just not great play at Kentucky. I saw him play a bunch at Kentucky, and you can see the size and the arm strength. He's got a powerful arm. There's no question. But that's just part of it. That's not what makes a great quarterback. It's not like, powerful arm, you're a great quarterback. There's all kinds of guys with power arms. Jim Druckenmiller had a power arm. Jeff George had a power arm. There's been a lot of guys who sucked in the NFL who had power arms. It doesn't guarantee anything. So Will Levis, didn't get drafted at all, and now will fall into round 2, and we'll see. Because after Levis goes, then that may open up the world of, hey, what about Trey Lance? Because I think after Levis, Trey Lance is probably the best quarterback in the draft. So no Levis, no Hendon Hooker. Only 3 quarterbacks went in the draft. They went 1, 2. C.J. Stroud surprisingly went to Houston with that second pick, despite the super low cognitive test that he scored so poorly in. He went number 2 to the Texans, who traded back up then with the next pick with Arizona and got Will Anderson. So the Texans, I think, probably obviously were debating there at 2, C.J. Stroud or Will Anderson, and they wind up making a deal with Arizona and getting both. So good for D'Amico and Cesario, and they get that D'Amico's 6-year run there rolling with 1 offensive player and 1 defensive dominator, and we'll see if it works out for them. Then the Colts, who had been sniffing around a quarterback, went quarterback at 4. I thought this was one of the best picks in the whole draft so far. Anthony Richardson. So 3 quarterbacks went in the first 4 picks, and then no more went the rest of the round. So, but I love Richardson and his potential in Indianapolis. I think Chris Ballard's a really good really good general manager. I thought Frank Reich was a good coach. Now, obviously, they've got Shane Steichen there, but I think it's pretty clear that the Colts wanted to get a quarterback. That quarterback has been the elusive piece for them, and they gambled on a high end guy in Richardson. But man, the talent is unbelievable. So he goes 4, and then I thought maybe the best pick of the first part of the draft was Seattle, getting Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. A lot of people thought Witherspoon was going to go in the 20s early in the draft process. Then he kept creeping up into the teens, into the early teens. And there was a lot of speculation Seattle would go with Jalen Carter. But, man, Seattle can't stop the run. But, man, between Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, and now Devin Witherspoon, they've got three big-time corners. And it's on in the NFC West between the Niners and the Seahawks. All right, should we? I see Alex in our green room. Let's welcome in Alex. Alex Barbour joins us for the first time ever. Alex, how are you, man? Nice to meet you.
Doing well. It's nice to meet you as well. My brain's a little bit mush from live stream for 4 hours, but it was a very fun 4 hours.
You live streamed the entire draft.
Yeah.
Tell people where, if they want to catch you in the future and they're new to you, where do you? Is it Hail Mary Sports Official at Gmail, or that's just the website? That's just your email address.
That's just the email address. I just go by Hail Mary Sports, so you guys can go and check that out. It's just Hail Mary Sports on Twitter as well as YouTube, if you guys are in the mood for some free entertainment.
Well, let's get into it right out of the chute. What'd you think of Bryce Young? Wait, did I?
You're good. You're good.
There we go. Okay. What do you think of Bryce Young going to Carolina? He's only 5'10".
Yeah.
I can't remember a quarterback really this small. I mean, people talked about how diminutive Brock Purdy is. Brock Purdy's 6'1", 220. This guy's 5'10", 195.
I know. It's interesting because based on the fact that he was chosen number 1 shows the fact that what happens up here is so much more important than what really happens in his physical build. He's only, I think, 10 pounds lighter measured than C.J. Stroud is. So he still, at least has some size on him, so to speak, but really good processor, not the strongest arm in the world, but really can pick apart a defense. Sounds a little bit like someone who I liked last year in Brock Purdy, who's my QB6. Not the strongest arm, but can layer passes properly, has good enough mobility, and then just someone who could manage the game extremely well.
We got this super chat from Dabuda, who says, does the Seahawks draft so far worry you? I really thought the Seahawks went 1 for 2. Witherspoon, I thought was one of my favorite players in the draft. And then they went for the Ohio State receiver, and he had a terrific career statistically, and he's good in the middle of the field. But I don't know. It wasn't my favorite player. He had some huge games in his career. I watched him have some of the biggest games really I've seen in the last few years. But to me, the 40 time was just okay. I like to see college receivers who really separate more.
Yeah.
It's a down year for the receivers. I think of the receivers, I kind of like Jordan Addison more than Quentin Johnston or Jackson Smith, the Nigba. But what do you think of Seattle's draft haul overall? I'm a huge fan of John Schneider and the job that he does.
Yeah, so when I had the instant reaction to the pick, I realized like Devon at 5 was to me a little bit rich. I was like, okay, well, I mean, the Seahawks, they've proven to be able to snipe value corners down the board. This is a deep corner class. So I thought it was a little bit high for them specifically to go corner. I love Devin Witherspoon. I think him in the top 10, perfectly fine. But I mean, it is nasty. You brought it up. You got Tariq Woolen there, Kobe Bryant, and now also Devin Witherspoon as your top 3 corners. It's a formidable front. So definitely worrisome there. And they've always been looking for a wide receiver 3. I was a big Dwayne Eskridge guy. Sucks to see that's like the end of that era. But, you're giving Geno another push. And with Aaron out of the NFC, with Brock pretty much sidelined for at least a portion of the season, I think they're really going to try to take full advantage of being able to fill in the gaps and just be able to push the pedal to the metal.
Houston, I thought Houston was kind of interesting. Oh, yeah. I didn't think they were going to go C.J. Stroud at 2, and they did. He's a California kid from Rancho Cucamonga and had that low cognitive test, and I think a lot of people thought, man, he's not going to go very high. Yeah. But some people thought Stroud was the most impressive player coming into the kind of pre-draft process, and then Houston takes Stroud and then trades back in with Arizona, and they get Will Anderson, and they start the D'Amico Ryans era with, a handpicked offensive player and a handpicked defensive front 7 player. Yeah. I'm sure D'Amico's feeling good right now.
Absolutely. No, I was really curious about where CJ would go because we've been hearing the term S2 test, and it's like obviously Brock Purdy was the number 1 scorer last year, ended up panning out as of right now. But what it was like really determining was, hey, what does a bad score mean in terms of draft stock? If CJ fell out of the top 10, maybe people really do. The NFL really does value that S2 test very highly, and they can see a correlation. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe it does actually have a really strong correlation to your performance on the field, but it really does show that when you hear all these rumors about these testing numbers, I think people feel a lot better about their guts and their evaluations than plain statistics like that.
What do you think of Richardson going to the Colts? I mean, and what do you think of Richardson overall? Because there's a lot of people that they're all over the map on him, and I get it. He needs to develop as a thrower, but what this kid's got is, I mean, he's 6'4", 245, and he can bust you. If he gets a seam, he can go 80 yards. He can run. I mean, you get inside the 5-yard line, this guy's a major threat. I think there's going to be development needed because he came out of Florida probably a tad early, but man, I thought Anthony Richardson, I think he goes to a great organization with stability. I think Ballard is a tremendous GM. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Richardson. Give me your rundown on him.
So I went on to my buddy Cody's show. He runs the Bring the Juice. They're like a similar size Colts YouTube channel. And we discussed actually the top quarterbacks in the draft and who would be best for the Colts. And I said, of all the quarterbacks not named Bryce Young, I think that Anthony Richardson would be my favorite. If CJ were there, I would still take Anthony Richardson for Steichen. When I look at Steichen's history, he is able to work with Jalen Hurts, who came into the league as an unpolished passer, really good with his legs. And then he was also somebody who had a really good work ethic. To me, Anthony Richardson is all of that because, I mean, the work ethic we'll see in time, but I saw him working a lot on his mechanics in the offseason. To me, I'm going to be optimistic and say that continues. But he has even more physical upside than Jalen Hurts does. I think that could be really positive, especially since Steichen already has a system that's proven to work with a similar caliber of player. So I love it to death. And it's awesome to see that they're making that long-term of a move.
Now, Arizona, I thought was interesting at 5. So they traded back up with Detroit, and they got Paris Johnson, who's just a very polished player. I didn't realize his dad had played in the NFL. His dad played for the Cardinals, actually. But that was, to me, this guy, 6'6", 313 pounds. And then what I'm hearing, I had a James Wiseman, as a Warrior fan, a little bit of a James Wiseman reflex when I heard that he spoke Mandarin and Portuguese. Didn't seem to help James Wiseman at all. But Paris Johnson, I've heard so many good things about Paris Johnson. And when I watched this film, I thought, man, this guy's a blue chipper. He's a plug and play tackle. And Arizona got up and got him there. And it was what do you think of their maneuvering overall?
So I like the fact that they got future draft capital. We kind of all know that this season's a wash for Arizona. So getting more quantity than quality was probably a very smart move. Paris, to me, he was tied to offensive tackle too. I really did like him. He actually continued boosting up my board during the draft process. 36.5-inch arms, ridiculous. I mean, you just can't find a random dude on the street who has that great mobility. I think he has some technical flaws, but he's played 1 year at left tackle. So I think that him going to Arizona is honestly one of the best situations because he has a year to develop before going to Kyler Murray. I love it. Athletic. He's smart. Obviously, you just brought that up. And then, he's going to be a day one starter for them, and he'll probably be there for 10, 15 years.
I think the Raiders probably got upset when the Seahawks took Devin Witherspoon. Yeah. I think the Raiders were thinking, man, Devin Witherspoon's going to fall into our lap. But they were forced to go with Tyree Wilson. Now, I like Tyree Wilson. I'm an A&M fan. He started at A&M, and he transferred to Texas Tech. And, man, long arms, 6'6", 270. The guy's a freaky pass rusher for sure. But, he's a bigger bodied pass rusher. I mean, there's faster guys coming off the edge for sure. But I mean, and then you look at this team. They were 27th in sacks despite having Max Crosby. Crosby, they said it in the draft, accounted for 46% of the Raiders' sacks on the year. So they needed to diversify up front. What did you think of Wilson? Do you see special traits there? His film at times is very special.
So what I really loved about Tyree, he has all the measurables you want. He's big, he's fast enough, and obviously those arms. You can't find dudes with 35.5-inch arms who are that productive. Really good against the run. He's good at tracking the ball carrier, really good pursuit angles. But what I loved about him is he's very raw as a pass rusher, but he still put up 50 pressures. So he knows how to still use his skills, even if they're not refined. And to me, if you have that rawness and still production, and I think he has the work ethic there, the only reason he fell is because that foot injury, and people really don't. They're really not optimistic about it. But otherwise, I think he probably would have been a shoo-in, possibly at pick number 2.
Bijan Robinson, I thought, was a real surprise. Now, Bijan's obviously quite a personality. Him and Susie Colbert were walking around on ESPN in the pregame, and I guess Bijan wants to be an actor. There were a couple highlights that they showed. I don't know which coverage you watched. I watched the ESPN coverage. Same. Were there three different broadcasts? It was ESPN, ABC, and NFL Network? Which one did you watch? I watched ESPN.
ESPN.
Yeah. For Kuiper or for, I mean, what did you want to, who pulled you in there?
Well, I mean,
who are you watching there for?
Dude, I love Greeny. I just love hearing his voice. Greeny's entertaining to listen to, so I always enjoy being able to listen to the Greeny. That's probably it. Kuiper.
I love Riddick. I like Riddick. I think Riddick is, Lewis is just, I think he's real, man. He's the closest that it gets to kind of like a personnel guy who's in the media.
Yeah. No, he's really good as well. But I love Greeny. I've always used to watch Get Up, so it's kind of nice to run it back with him.
Well, this is where the draft kind of, I thought, took an interesting turn. We're still in the top 10. We're at the 8th pick. Falcons take Bijan Robinson. Yeah. And Bijan had an incredible year, 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns. But the highlights they showed of him as a receiver were like, whoa. Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize. Now, I don't watch that much of Texas. And the Big 12, every time I tune into one of those games, it's like I feel like I'm watching like video game. It's just, nobody stops anybody. It's hard to really know what you're watching. But Arthur Smith wants to run the ball. And, man, I think they got a pretty decent run-blocking offensive line, but they're leaning on Algier and Huntley, and these guys are nothing compared. And they've got Desmond Ridder, and you would think they probably need a better quarterback. But you know what? They've kind of held firm and said, we're going to go with Desmond Ridder. And so I can see their thinking here. Let's have a dominant run game behind a real bell cow back. And they grabbed Bijan Robinson. I know Dallas probably wanted him. There's probably a handful of teams that wanted him, but I didn't expect, especially in this day and age, it's 2023, I didn't expect a running back to go in the top 10. Is it a stupid move? Is it a smart move? Give me what did you say on your live stream in the middle of this thing?
So I lamented the fact that he was not going to become a Philadelphia Eagle. I mean, I think his mom.
Are you an Eagle guy?
No. My best friend is. So all he does is talk about it. But
where are you based, by the way, Alex? Are you based in the Bay? Where are you based exactly?
So actually, one of my buddies is the scouting director for the Niners. So I love the Bay, but I go to SMU currently. So I'm in Dallas.
You're in Dallas. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And one of your buddies is the Niners scouting director? Which college director? Pro director?
Pro.
Pro. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to name him or no?
RJ Gillen.
RJ Gillen. And you guys are just buddies from what?
So he knew my professor in freshman year, and she connected me with him, and we've been talking ever since. So really cool guy. Deal. Yeah, no, he's somebody.
And how old are you? You're a young guy. You're what are you? 25?
22.
22. And you go to college at SMU?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go.
I'm still an undergrad. Now I got a lot of room to grow.
But, and what do you want to do? You want to be a pro personnel director, a college personnel director, a media draftnik, TV star, radio star, YouTube star? What's your goal?
GM.
No, I mean if it's too personal, by the way, just say shut the hell up. I'm not talking to you.
No, don't worry. No, GM all day. I would love to be able to run an organization like that. That's a dream of mine, hands down.
Okay, so back to the running back. Yeah. Are we in an era now where running backs are teams now seeing greater value in running backs, or is it team by team? What was your read? Where did you have Bijan mocked in leading into it?
At 10 to the Eagles. So I was thinking it was a very far stretch for the Falcons to go after him, especially when I saw Jalen Carter on the board. I was like, yeah, it's a Georgia guy. I highly doubt they're going to go that way. But man, I was saying that I think the running backs will actually go higher this year. The NFL is very trend heavy. It's a copycat league. And last year we saw 3-star running backs come out of the draft: Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, and Dameon Pierce. I think that
they all had a pretty good immediate impact.
Exactly. So I believe that the talent in this draft was even better. And then you also add in the fact that you've already seen proven production from lesser talents. I thought it was going to boost the guys up the board. As much as they did, not so sure. I didn't think that Jahmyr Gibbs was going to go that high, but I'm sure we'll talk about it in a second.
Yeah.
I really did. I was okay with the Bijan pick. I felt really bad because I don't think the Falcons are ready. And I think that Bijan could have been an all-pro running back for a Super Bowl team in the Philadelphia Eagles, or honestly anywhere else. I think there were just too many open holes for Atlanta. And I know they want to run the ball, but I don't know. I felt like it was very much a luxury pick on a team that doesn't have very much luxury.
Here's my philosophy on a running back. If you are inside of your Super Bowl window and you feel, because there's not, the nice thing about running back is you can plug and play them. The same run you run at Texas is very similar to the run you're running with the Niners, the Eagles. So, unlike wide receiver where there's all kinds of transition time to adjust to coverages and getting off the line of scrimmage in the NFL compared to college. And, college, you'll get free releases. In the pros, you don't get a free release. So you see rookie receivers struggle. But rookie running backs that have big-time talent, they can step in and play right away. So, to me, I like the idea of going for the star back if you're in your window.
Exactly.
If you're the Niners, if you're like you said, the Eagles, you lose Miles Sanders in free agency. But you're in your Super Bowl window. Go get a big time Bijan Robinson type running back and keep that train rolling. But for teams like Atlanta or anybody who's not in your Super Bowl window, by the time you do get in your Super Bowl window, what's Bijan Robinson going to be?
Exactly. It's
So I don't.
yeah.
It's not. What'd you think of the Eagles pick? Because to me, this is the most interesting pick in the first half of the draft. Eagles trade up to 9. They take Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter wore 99 at Georgia. He's a great freaking football player. He's quick. He's explosive. But he also may be a little bit of a malcontent. The guy's got problems. He's got baggage. He's got issues off the field. He's got maturity issues. He's got motivational issues. He didn't show up very in shape at all for the off-season workouts. I got to question the maturity. The talent's off the charts. He also had the MCL sprain. But if they're getting, to me, it's as simple as this. If they feel like Fletcher Cox and their defensive line can force that kid to play to his potential, then watch the hell out for the Eagles because this guy's a monster. But that's a huge but. That's a huge but. And to me, this is Howie Roseman, who loves D-line, and I see why. But this is him saying, you know what, Javon Hargrave's a Niner. We got to replace him. Jalen Carter. He's the guy. And if they get the best of Jalen Carter, it's an awesome pick. But I think that his character and his work ethic and his, motor and his maturity is all called into question. And we'll see. We'll see. It's to me, this is a boom or a bust kind of a pick. Give me your breakdown on it.
Yeah, well, I think that I totally agree with your sentiment about the personality concerns. That's why he was 11 on my board. Talent-wise, he'll be number 1. I mean, that's just the plain truth. If he's 100% every single play, it's number 1.
He could have gone number 1.
He could have.
A lot of people thought the Bears were going to take Carter number 1.
Yeah, I know. And they had him at 9. That was just we don't even need to get into that topic. But when it comes down to it, I believe that the situations where he'd have the best maturation process would be in Philly or probably in New England. And in Philadelphia, you're surrounded by guys where I didn't really hear very much about Jalen Carter's personality problems before this past year. He's somebody who seems to reciprocate the energy that is around him. And I'm looking at guys like Nolan Smith with great work ethic, and then Jordan Davis, his buddy, his former teammate, great work ethic. And then you have a leader on the team in Jalen Hurts, who is extremely inspiring and works his ass off every single day. I firmly believe that this might be a really good spot for him to actually mature properly. But I was hearing rumors about the Raiders and the Seahawks, and I think Pete Carroll could do a good job at maturing a prospect like that. But when it comes to the Raiders, I just didn't trust it. And I'm just so happy for his sake that he's going to a spot where at least the probability of a boom is higher than it usually is for another team.
I'm one of these guys that, it's a rough game and it's played sometimes by some rough guys, so on and so forth. But the more I around the game on a day-to-day basis and see how professional these guys are. I mean, guys show up with briefcases and laptops, and this is not Party USA. I mean, these guys take this very, very seriously, and you better be a pro, because if you're not, I mean, I'll give you an example. I thought that kid that Seahawks took a few years ago, Malik McDowell, out of Michigan State, that he was a really talented guy. But he crashed an ATV. He wound up hurting himself. He had problems off the field. He continued to have problems off the field. He had previous problems at Michigan State. And now I'm kind of in a mindset that, you know what? You can't babysit guys all the time. You can't be there around the clock. So you better just take guys who have motivation and are good. Try to get. I'm not saying you need choir boys because it's still a rough sport. But you got to have guys who care. You got to have guys who are defensive football and just football in general. You got to be accountable to one another. You got to do all the lifting. You got to do all the mental reps. You know what I'm saying? And the guy next to you's got to do it too, or none of this works. So. That would be my big concern with Carter, just how mature is he. What did you think of Detroit getting Jahmyr Gibbs? Because when I saw that, I thought, I love this move. I think there was a bunch of teams that wanted Jahmyr Gibbs. He is a home run hitter. He's an incredible runner / receiver. You saw the scene inside the Lions' war room. I mean, those guys were ecstatic. It was like, I mean, they were just going crazy. Dan Campbell was running around tackling people, and Brad Hopkins was pumping his fist, and they were feeling great about it. I like the pick, but I can see people panning it. Where were you on it?
So the thing is, I used to take Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell to the Lions in the second round. Those were my dream picks in round 2. So for them to get them in round 1 rubs me the wrong way a bit. I think they could really use a boundary corner. There was one there at both 12 and 18. That was like Deontay Banks, Joey Porter Jr. Christian Gonzalez was there at 12, and they could have even traded back and gotten him. I thought they misutilized their funds, so to speak. I like Jahmyr Gibbs. He's a really good running back, but this is a really deep running back class, and you already have a bona fide starter. And you're talking about it like this is a team that's in their Super Bowl window. Dropping a running back in could end up being a very valuable move. But I feel that with the lack of receiving talent and the lack of true corner number 1 on their team, those are 2 very valuable positions that they had really easy shots on that they passed for lower value positions. So a little bit concerned about that, but Jahmyr's a great player. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're picked at pick 12, 18, or, at pick 34 that they have. If he's on the roster, it's an addition, not a subtraction.
So yeah, I love the Gibbs pick, and I'm to me it's like, hey, find out if a guy can play. If he can play, as far as where you take him, value matters, but ultimately it comes down to the reality is history tells us that maybe over a third of these guys are just going to be out of the league in not that long of a time. So it's all about just finding guys you like. Jack Campbell from Iowa is a really solid linebacker, but to me that was one of the surprising picks of the first round. He had great workout numbers. Obviously he was a great football player at Iowa. They had a tremendous defense. But I just, I thought they were way better athletes. Obviously they just fell in love with Jack Campbell. They took him. Where didn't most people have him around 50 or 60, and they took him 18?
I had him at 24 on my board, but I thought I was really high. I thought I was one of his biggest fans. That's the thing. I was like, oh man, like if he's there at 27, the Bills better the Bills should take him. And I was like, man, I'm crazy saying that. Like the odds are he's probably going to be there at their second pick. And seeing him go that early, like I said, I usually take him to the Lions in round 2, not round 1. It's a surprise, but he's the only linebacker in this class that's actually talented at that 6'5", 250-pound frame. There's nobody else like it, and he has a great work ethic. He fits perfectly in. To me, I like that pick more than the Jahmyr pick because of the fact that they're kind of desperate for a true leader on that defense. There's a lot of pieces that are already in place, and I don't think the linebacker class is deep at all. So that's why.
Green Bay going Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah.
I know he looks a little bit like Nick Bosa. He's got the 6-pack. He's 6'5", he's 272. He's sitting on a couch with like 5 beautiful women. The guy looks like life is good.
Yeah.
But I watched Iowa, and Iowa's got some great football players.
Yes.
We just talked about one of them. Riley Moss is another one.
Yes.
Van Ness is a really good player, but I don't know. It's like where is he J.J. Watt? Is he an interior guy who rushes the passer? If so, I think there's better guys at that. Is he an edge player? If he is, I've seen way more explosive guys off the edge. Green Bay took him. Todd McShay claimed that he loved him. He's versatile and scheme versatile, but is he dominant or is he kind of workmanlike?
He is a one-trick pony. This guy converts speed to power in a straight line, and that's it. That's why I'm a lot lower on him than probably the consensus is. I have him around 75, 80 on my board. He's somebody who's young, explosive, very athletic, and extremely moldable. And that's exactly what the Packers always look for. And in probably 3 to 4 years, they'll end up saying, hey, that was worth the first round pick. And they're not in their Super Bowl window, so they have 3 to 4 years to work with. So I think that's fine. I gave the pick a B-. I was like, it makes sense. And he's a good player. I don't think that he's going to be a day one impact at all.
Green Glass Fold makes a donation. Says, see Ravens showing their draft board on live TV. Ouch. I didn't see that. Did you notice that at all?
No. But as a Steelers fan, I wish I saw that just so maybe I could plan for maybe telling the Steelers to draft all their players.
MF in the chat says, I like this guest, Larry. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Alex contacted me on Twitter, and we're glad to have him here helping us break down the draft. All right, let's get to, you mentioned the Steelers. Let's get down there because I thought this was an interesting move.
Yeah.
I think Bill Belichick still hates the Jets, and the Jets, I think, were sitting there hoping that Broderick Jones, the blue chip tackle from Georgia, was going to fall into their lap at 15, and instead New England trades out with the Steelers. And I just thought that was a way for Belichick again to stick it to the Jets, and then Broderick Jones. If there was a player that when they showed the highlights of, I thought, wow, look at that guy. It's probably Broderick Jones. He's 6'5", he's 3'11". He's clearly young. I think he still wears braces. But, I mean, he looked really young. Yeah. But, I mean, he also, looks totally dominating. He's got a skinny waist, huge, long arms, 310 pounds, and looks like the frame he could put on 25 pounds over the next 3 years. I don't know. The Steelers seem like always have a great angle on the draft. Yeah. If you told me that kid became like a Pro Bowl tackle, I would not be shocked. I mean, it's all about his makeup and how hard he works. But man, the film looks awesome. If you saw Broderick Jones tonight, what did you think of the pick? You're a Steeler guy, so you were probably pumped up.
So I actually did a trade with New England with Pittsburgh in my final mock earlier today. So I was like super excited, but I'm a Joey Porter Jr. guy. Number 2 on my board.
His dad played there.
He might be the pick at 32. So,
that's right. The Steelers have the next pick.
They have the next pick, and he's on the board. So, before I start lamenting, I think it's great. I'm tired of Dan Moore being the left tackle. The Steelers have invested a lot of money in the offseason on interior offensive linemen. So maybe that's because they wanted to get a left tackle. I'll say this. There were a lot of rumors, I don't know if you saw them, of the Steelers trading up with the Bears if Jalen Carter were there.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that was a huge, huge rumor. And I saw that the Bears made a trade at 9 with Jalen Carter on the board. And I mean, I might be able to find it and replay it. I literally jumped out of my seat when I saw the pick was traded and then slammed my fist when I saw the Eagles made the 1 pick trade up. So it was very, it was a roller coaster of emotions, but Broderick Jones is a great player. I don't watch him versus Missouri because my boy Isaiah McGuire ate his lunch. It's really weird. Consistent in every game except that one. But,
well, we definitely want to get your thoughts on some of the guys for tomorrow, but let's finish up on the first round. Will McDonald went to the Jets. 10 career forced fumbles. I saw that and I thought, that sounds like D Ford.
Oh yeah.
So to me, McDonald is undersized, but what a tremendous athlete he is. Commanders went with Emmanuel Forbes, who has 6 pick sixes, but to me, I mean, when I watched him, I thought, oh my God, any running back with any size who runs to his side of the field, he's going to run out of bounds. I mean, he's 166 pounds. Yeah. That's too light. I mean, how light's too light? That's too light, especially when you've got height.
Yeah, I weigh as much as the guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. Yeah, and he's a great player. I mean, 6 pick sixes, 14 career picks. Emmanuel Forbes can break on the freaking football, and he's looking to break on the football, and I like him. Yeah. But I liked him more late second round, early third round, because he's 166 pounds.
It's tough.
I thought he was overdrafted.
Yeah, I thought he was overdrafted too. Talent-wise, he was my corner 2 in the draft. But physics exist. And I decided not to go out and play football at SMU because I thought that I would absolutely be annihilated at over 166 pounds. This dude looks like a stick. He is not. I am much more dense than he is. I'm 5'9". This dude is 6'1", 166 pounds. It's not 5'10", 166. A 6'1", 166 pound man. Like, talk about a praying mantis on the field. This dude is straight up looking like the stick bugs you see on National Geographic.
I mean, any big back who's going to run to his side is just going to crumble him. I mean, I Forbes, I would say, he's going to spend a lot of time on IR. Yeah. Then I thought Patriots got a great value going Christian Gonzalez where they did. Perfect. I thought that was good value. The one thing about Belichick, he knows DBs. Look at the DBs they've taken the last couple of years. Yep. He's got a great eye for it. He's probably the NFL's preeminent defensive backfield coach. I don't know if people know that, but then the Lions went Jack Campbell. Okay, now we get to Tampa at 19. Oh, I think this is the steal of the draft. Kalijah Cansey. Yeah, well, I mean, just from the standpoint of he ACC Defensive Player of the Year. This guy can convert speed to power.
Okay. Yeah.
He's 280 pounds. I think you're talking about a guy who could play outside in a 4-3. I think he could play inside in a 4-3 as an interior rusher. I don't like him in a 34 front, but I love him in a 4-3 front. And I'm not saying he's Aaron Donald because there's only one Aaron Donald. Yeah. And I think the pushback is always like, oh, he ain't Aaron Donald. Okay. Who cares? I mean, Aaron Donald is maybe the greatest defensive tackle of all time. I mean, I've seen Mean Joe Green. I've seen some of the great ones. Reggie White. Aaron Donald is as good as any I've ever seen. Yeah. But Cansey, his film was so damn good that I was like really surprised. I know he's oddly shaped, 6'1", 280. And if you watch him, you're like, this guy's undersized. But the quickness, the hand strength, the technique, the production, the awards, the accolades. I mean, this guy's. I think he's the real deal. I'm a huge. If you have a one gap penetrating front, and you're looking to get up the field, this guy can help you in a lot of different areas. Sure. I'm a Cansey guy. You're not, huh?
I like Cansey, but you know how we were talking about running backs being for like a Super Bowl window. I think Kalijah, I don't trust him in the run, especially with his T-Rex arms, like 30-inch arms. Like I have longer arms than Kalijah Cansey. That's going to be a little bit rough when offensive linemen in the NFL know how to use their length a little bit better. I'm a little bit worried about that, but he's amazing as a pass rusher. We call him DPRs, designated pass rushers. And I think that a team that would utilize that properly is one that is looking for a guy to plug and play for a win now move. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have way too many holes. And there's Anton Harrison there who I'm extremely biased. I loved Anton Harrison coming out of Oklahoma. He's a great tackle. And they're looking for a left tackle right now. And I was like, oh, if you're going to play for the future, do something like that. Or trade back or go a quarterback. I mean, Will Levis is still on the board somehow, some way. But, I just thought that Cansey's a great player. I like Cansey. Similar to how Bijan was taken to the wrong situation, I just wish he were going to a place that would appreciate him and use him a little bit better now.
Then we had a run on receivers. We mentioned already Jackson Smith-Njigba going to Seattle. Not a huge, didn't love that pick for them. Quentin Johnston from TCU went to the Chargers. I thought he had kind of build-up speed and not really quickness. But what a weird pick for the Chargers. You have Keenan Allen. You have Mike Williams. They're both big, physical, tall receivers. And you get another guy that's literally, it seems like such a redundant part. And you had Zay Flowers from BC with his 4.4 speed on the board. He went the very next pick to the Ravens. I thought that was a great pick by Eric DeCosta. And Telesco is a terrific GM, the Chargers GM. But and I watched a lot of Max Duggan and TCU. Heck, you probably did too, being there. What was your feeling on Quentin Johnson? To me, he just seems like a great college receiver, but I don't know that he's a great pro receiver.
It's going to be tough. I have him actually as my wide receiver one, but I did have him as somebody who had big questions on. So when it comes to the Chargers drafting him, I actually had him in a mock that I did going Quentin Johnston. So I'm happy to at least say that. The reason why I chose him, maybe this is not the reason Telesco did, but the reason I did is, hey, I know Lamar Jackson is a direct competitor to us when it comes to the playoffs. I know Lamar is really damn appreciative of the bigger wide receivers, the bigger targets. So basically what you're doing is saying, Ravens, we're going to make sure that you are sticking to the smaller wide receivers. Hollywood Brown didn't fully work out. Devin Duvernay did not fully work out. Like Lamar seemed to have a preference for a larger wide receiver. Now, he's progressed a lot in his career. Lamar Jackson has. So maybe he is a little bit better at getting to somebody like Zay Flowers. But I think that it could have been a strategic move on that part, or they're getting ready for Keenan Allen to go bye-bye. And they just want another guy to give Justin Herbert that ability to just say, you know what? I feel uncomfortable. I'm just going to throw it up to somebody. And if he gets more surefire with his hands, he's going to be dominant.
Then the Vikings, they lose Thielen to Carolina in the offseason, and they go with Jordan Addison, who started at Pitt and finished at SC. And, man, now you got Addison and Justin Jefferson. I mean, I don't know if people know this, but Addison won the Biletnikoff Award when he was at Pitt. Could have came out, decided to go to SC to play another year. but he's 175 pounds. He's not the biggest guy. Minnesota's defense was god awful at the end of the year. I was very surprised. I mean, I know that Thielen's a good player and they want to replace Thielen, but there's other receivers in this draft. I mean, I like Addison a lot. As I just said, he's productive. But the 40 time's just okay. He's not necessarily all that big. I don't see crazy separation. I don't see a guy who's winning with strength at the line of scrimmage. And your defense was 31st in the NFL. You couldn't stop anybody. I think you badly needed an athlete somewhere on your defense, and instead they went Jordan Addison. That was a very bizarre move, I thought.
We're going to have to see what they do in the next 2 days. I think that that's going to be the key. Maybe they're very comfortable with the depth at corner. I thought they should have went Deontay Banks or Joey Porter Jr. Biased as a Steelers fan, I wanted them to go Deontay Banks and let Jordan Addison or JPJ fall to us because, pairing him with Kenny Pickett back at Pittsburgh days, that'd be kind of cool. But, I'm sure they just felt threatened by the fact they didn't have a second round pick and they wanted to get a second wide receiver. Do I think it was the best move for them? No. But I think making sure that the offense is at least clicking since, Kirk's there for one more year essentially, or probably a billion other ones. They always sign him to a 1-year contract. I think it was at least an understandable move. Maybe not the best, but understandable.
Bottom of the round, Giants go Deontay Banks, corner from Maryland, and then they showed his film, and it's like 4 of the 5 plays they showed would have been penalties in the NFL. Would have been face guarding. The guy doesn't turn for the ball, and then they even mentioned it. He has a hard time turning for the ball. Great, you just drafted a first round corner that's going to be a regular PI offender. Then Jacksonville traded a couple times, and they gave this pick to Buffalo. This is the one that was really a mystery. Buffalo's got Knox, the Ole Miss tight end. I thought they have another tight end as well. They draft Dalton Kincaid. Now, Kincaid had a great productive career at Utah, but Kincaid is not the athlete that some of these other tight ends are. He was a walk-on at the University of San Diego. He worked himself into being a really productive player, catching passes for Cam Rising at Utah. But to me, Michael Mayer is clearly better than Dalton Kincaid. I think Kincaid's got production. I'm not going to deny the collegiate production that Kincaid had. Rising looked for him and found him a ton. He had some amazing games where it was like pitch and catch. But I see a guy who's not as strong, doesn't have as much growth potential, not as great of an athlete as Mayer or Darnell Washington or some of the other guys in this draft. He's a crazy great receiver. And it will help Josh Allen. But I thought I would have gone Michael Mayer there. And then Dallas, it was almost like Dallas was going to go Michael Mayer. They kept showing the Mayer highlights. And they went with Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. And Mozzie, if you're like me, I read the Bruce Feldman Freaks list.
Number one.
And he was number one. So he was number one. He's the most biggest physical freak there is. But I don't know, man. To me, he seems like a 2-down run plugger. There's all kinds of guys. Let's just say this. I would rather, if I was Dallas, pass on him here, go with Michael Mayer, and go draft Keandre Coburn out of Texas in the 5th or 6th round and probably get a very similar output to what they're going to get out of Mozzie. Mozzie's more explosive, a little stronger. He's a dominant physical guy, and I know they need to plug the run. But they just lost Dalton Schultz to the Texans, and they have Michael Mayer sitting in their lap, and they pass on him. I think Michael Mayer's a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. I think that's a move Dallas is going to regret.
I am lower on Michael Mayer than you significantly. However, I still thought
why don't you like Mayer?
So I honestly think he's uninspiring as a route runner, not very high in terms of separation. I feel like he's very similar to Pat Freiermuth, who I watch all the time. I think in a certain role, he'll do very well. But that role has to be right for him. I don't think he's versatile. But when it comes to Dalton Kincaid, I thought the Bills might have been a little bit threatened by the fact that all the wide receivers went. And I think they wanted to get one of those. But since Dalton Kincaid is comfortable in the slot, I think they're going to be using him there more as a receiving weapon rather than a pure tight end. Because I just have that weird feeling. They've been always trying to get another tight end, O.J. Howard, Gronk. I think this was their way of saying, you know what? We're going to get somebody who can play as a receiver, but also maybe be that future option at tight end.
some people are pushing back on the me saying that Mayer is a better athlete than Kincaid. How did you have them graded out as athletes? I see Mayer as significantly better, but I can see there's a lot of people that like Dalton Kincaid. He had a terrific productive career.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for some of the workout numbers. I want to see how these guys actually measured out against each other.
Yeah, for me, I had Kincaid having significantly better long speed, but similar in terms of the short area quickness. Kincaid was a lot more smooth as a route runner to me, but when it comes to blocking, I don't think anybody could match Michael Mayer or Darnell Washington. Those guys are just easily in a league of their own. So I think a team like Dallas that loves to run the ball, I think Dalton Kincaid doesn't fit the way that Michael Mayer would. So I think it's just depending on which type of, it's what type of flavor ice cream do you want? Just because someone likes chocolate chip cookie dough and some people like mint chocolate chip doesn't mean one's better than the other. It just depends on who's wanting to buy it.
Lance Zierlein compares Kincaid to Zach Ertz. It's not bad. It's not a bad comp. Pac-12 guy played at Stanford. I think that's kind of a fair comp.
All right. Not against it.
And then the final part of the draft, you mentioned Anton Harrison. Jacksonville traded back a couple times. Trent Baalke took Anton Harrison. Bengals went Miles Murphy, who I think is a better athlete than a football player. He's a 5-star athlete.
Yeah.
I don't see crazy edge speed, and I don't see a lot of power, but he's a bigger defensive end for sure. And they've had Carlos Dunlap, so maybe he's very similar. Yeah. Saints took Brian Brzee from Clemson, who had that tragedy with his sister dying. He's a tough kid for sure. Yep. And then the Eagles went with Nolan Smith, the Georgia. I mean, Eagles are cornering the market on Georgia guys between Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean, Jordan Davis. I mean, everybody off that Georgia defense. It's the right defense if you're going to take everybody off of it. But I was shocked that Nolan Smith, who ran 4.38? Yeah, 4.39. Yeah, I mean, he's there at 30. I thought that was one of the best picks of the night is Howie Roseman stealing Nolan Smith at 30.
Oh, I totally agree. I thought the Seahawks would have nabbed Nolan Smith in a heartbeat. I didn't expect him to get past 20.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder why he did. I mean, I know he needs to have some, he needs some greater strength, and he was somewhat undisciplined, but he's one of the best athletes off the edge that we've seen coming out really in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this about him. His primary weapon, so to speak, when it comes to block shedding is he has this crazy wide rip. So when you watch him be able to block shed, it's a lot of pectoral strength. And that's a big reason his season ended because he had a pectoral tear. So I don't know if maybe teams are uncomfortable going after him because of the fact that, similar to how Hendon Hooker, his primary asset is his legs, and he had an ACL tear. The primary asset of Nolan Smith in terms of block shedding, in terms of his run stuffing ability, is that pectoral strength. So you might not be getting a day one dude. I'm surprised personally, but thinking about it from devil's advocate, that'd probably be the reasoning.
Looking at Mayer and Dalton Kincaid side by side, basically same height, very similar in a lot of their measurables. Yeah. Where Mayer lost out was when he did his workout. He just didn't his individual workouts were not great. 4.7 is what he ran. I think Kincaid beat that. I don't have Kincaid's 40 in front of me, but I think he beat that. 32.5-inch vertical, not great. But as I said, Mayer scored 9 touchdowns this year for the Irish. I'm a big Michael Mayer fan. Yeah. And then the Chiefs finish out round 1 with Felix Anadike Azuma, who's from K-State and I guess a Kansas City kid and a very popular player. But I was thinking maybe they'd go Mayer. I mean, you've got this incredible tight end right now in Kelsey, and he's getting up there in age. Yep. And to have the double tight end, and it was kind of a luxury pick, as they mentioned in the broadcast. I thought maybe they would go Michael Mayer. So they didn't. They went with Felix
Onyedik Uzomah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
It's tough. Trust me. Don't worry. Don't feel judged.
So is there a player that didn't go in round 1 outside of JPJ, Joey Porter Jr.? Yeah. Is there a player outside of Joey Porter Jr. that who are you most surprised did not get picked tonight?
Will Levis is an easy answer, but another one is Brian Branch. You know,
Safety from Bama.
yeah, even though he tested pretty poorly, we still saw last year that even Kyle Hamilton, who tested in the 4.6s, had a very, very solid year. And I thought to be fair, I didn't expect Nolan Smith to be there. I was like, okay, the Eagles are going to nab him up, or the Jaguars are going to nab him up, or I mean, hell, I didn't expect corner to be there, but the Giants, they lost Julian Love. I was surprised that he fell out.
You're there in Texas. You're a Steeler fan. Were you a Danny Gray fan?
So funny thing, when when vaccines were around on campus, I was sitting out after, like, 'cause you have to wait 15 minutes, and the football team was there, and Danny Gray was too. So Danny Gray was there. The coaches were making fun of him actually because he couldn't put on weight. So fun story. And like everybody would just tease him. They're like, dude, how can you like get bling when you can't even get weight? It was just really funny. But he's a really good deep threat. I thought he was an okay option there in the third round. You know, he fits a role. And since the Niners found, like, I didn't think I'm not a huge Trey Lance guy. I'm just going to be completely honest. So I didn't really trust that they would be in a win now mode. I thought that it was interesting, but, still a solid player. But yeah, he's just a little bit thin. I don't trust him to be a consistent starter all the time, but he's a really good deep threat. He has horrible hands. The amount of times SMU receivers drop balls is baffling to me.
Who was the other SMU receiver that was supposed to be the guy, and then Danny had the big year last year? Who was the guy? Who was the other receiver?
So Rashee Rice is a good. Yeah, he's
in this year's draft, but I'm talking about 2 years ago. Then they had another receiver besides Danny Gray.
Reggie Roberson. Yeah,
Reggie Roberson.
I thought
bigger guy.
What was his name? Like Texas Speed. I think that was his nickname.
Reggie Roberson. Yeah.
And torn ACL just definitely derailed his last season. Then Danny Gray took a big step up, and then that speed 4.3 is undeniable. So definitely a good compliment there.
Okay, you mentioned Trey Lance.
Mm-hmm.
I have made the prediction literally months ago. I mean, at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season, at the end of the playoffs, I should say, that the 49ers were going to recommit to Brock Purdy as the starter, that they were going to probably trade Trey Lance if they got a good offer, and that it would happen this weekend. And I've taken a lot of heat. It's funny, though, because when I said it at a time when people were expecting Trey Lance to be handed the starting job or at least battling Brock Purdy for it. And I'm like, no, I think Brock's going to be the guy, and they're going to trade Trey. Since that point, the owner, the general manager, the head coach, they've all kind of come out and said that Brock is indeed their guy, kind of stated that clearly. Now the head coach is talking up Sam Darnold, and there's been all kinds of rumors about Trey, but most of the talk today was, hey, there's nothing concrete on the table. None of that really surprised me, at all, because I expected there to not be any real offer on the table today. To me, because Trey Lance is nobody's first at this point. I don't think he's anybody's first option. But like, here we are in the draft, and Will Levis is still there. And then after Will Levis, I think Trey Lance might be the best quarterback on the board. Now, it's some people may like Hendon Hooker. Okay, if you like Hendon Hooker, great. But then after Hendon Hooker, I like Trey Lance more than Jake Haener, more than McKee, more than DTR, more than a lot of these guys. I kind of like Clayton Tune, and since you're in Texas, I may want to get your thoughts on Clayton Tune and Max Duggan, because you're right there in the backyard of those guys. But give me your thoughts on why you're not a fan of Trey Lance. And we'll go from there.
So when I first evaluated him, I saw a lot of throws that, like you talked about how there's like open releases. There's just stuff in college that you will never be able to replicate in the NFL. People were talking about Trey as this dude with 0 interceptions on his career. And when I watched him, I saw that ball placement was just not there. And that's been true. You see that his cannon can be completely wild. You'll see a beautiful dart right down the field like Danny Gray in the preseason. But then you'll see some passes where it's like, come on, man. Like, you can place that better. Like, his deep accuracy down the sideline, a lot of people were talking about, especially during the draft process, he is known to overshoot those. And I want a quarterback that, can tame his arm a little bit. And similar to the way Anthony Richardson was working on his mechanics, I didn't see that from Trey. I personally did not see that work ethic that I truly love. And that's one of my big factors that not many people probably have, as heavily weighted as I do. When I see a quarterback have work ethic, to me, that will outmatch almost any physical trait that you can have. And when I see Trey Lance, especially nowadays, like after a loss in a strip club going like this, I just don't see a guy who is prioritizing his body and his game above what he wants to do outside. So to me, that's why I just don't think he has the priorities in order. And he's a young kid.
That's okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's and it's a fair evaluation.
Yeah.
What do you think are his strengths? What do you like about his game, and what do you think is lacking? Because to me, what I saw is just a guy who was kind of one-speeded, in that everything came out hot. And the drop percentage was fat. It was like a 10% drop percentage. Yeah. There's only like 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the league, I think, last year that had a drop percentage over 10%. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, it's a tiny sample size, so it's like how much credence do you put in a small sample size? But to me, it was that one opinion, which is just a lot of the ball coming out, really, really hot. It's not the most catchable ball. That's all I saw. And to me, he needs refinement as a thrower, as far as timing, touch, tempo, accuracy, that kind of thing. But I see some other traits that I think are advanced, like his ball handling and play action faking and stuff like that. But his throwing is so raw, and it should be raw. He's played 1 year since high school.
Yep.
So what do you see as his strengths and weaknesses?
So you named it pretty damn on the money. I mean, his ability to threaten with his legs, especially, is something that's a very big asset. But you got to throw the ball. Unless you're Lamar Jackson early in your career and you're Houdini, I don't really trust you to lead a franchise unless you're continuously working on your mechanics, continuously working with your receivers, continuously being able to improve your game. And I haven't seen that. Again, it's the work ethic thing for me. That's what I think he needs to mature. And that could totally happen. And I'd be more than happy for someone to say old takes exposed. This is this idiot right here talk about Trey Lance being a buffoon in a strip club. I absolutely am happy if that's the case. But I'm 100% honest with this. I just don't have that faith in him to work on his game and improve it.
Where do you, now that the draft first round has come and gone, I guess the question is, where would you rank Trey among the quarterbacks that are left? Do you like him more than Levis? Less? More than Hooker? Less?
Yeah.
More than Haener? Less? Because I guess the question is this: at what point in this draft will the possibility happen of John Lynch's phone ringing because Trey Lance is better than the best quarterbacks that are available? When do you think that's going to happen here?
It's a valid question. Of course, the price tag is what really does matter. I think Will Levis right now is a superior prospect. I think Will Levis now he has a fire lit under his rear. I think that might actually be a major positive of him not going in the first round, not a negative. But I'd be debating at Hendon Hooker. Trey's younger, bigger arm, much more potential. Hendon Hooker
maybe healthier, actually.
Healthier as well. Hendon Hooker's also coming off an injury that limits his best ability, which is his legs. Hendon Hooker comes from a system that's extremely friendly to quarterbacks, not really translatable the way that, Trey Lance at least has been working in a Shanahan system. I think that I would probably take him as QB2 right now.
So you would take him after Levis, but before Hooker?
Yes.
And definitely before Haener, McKee, DTR.
Absolutely.
What about all those guys? Let's go through a couple of those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Do you, heck, if they're just looking for a polished guy who can be the third stringer, Stetson Bennett may fit the bill.
Yes.
I kind of like what I saw in the All-Star games, believe it or not, of Malik Cunningham, who's just an awesome runner, not a great thrower, but not a terrible thrower either, and a tremendous runner.
Yes.
And then, the three guys that I keep, there's been 3 reported meetings between the 49ers and DTR, which makes me feel like that could probably be a smokescreen. I think Tanner McKee is interesting, but there's no mobility, and I think I'm questioning durability. Haener I really like because of his cognitive testing and how productive he was. MVP of the Senior Bowl, looked great in Mobile. So Haener, and he's a Bay Area kid from Monte Vista. So Haener I would be interested in. But the guys who really intrigue me the most outside of Cunningham and Haener are Clayton Tune, University of Houston, Max Duggan from TCU, and Jaron Hall from BYU. Give
Yeah.
me your thoughts on those three guys. And you probably saw a ton of Toon and Duggan this year, so you might be a
Yeah.
perfect guy to ask about these guys.
I saw them
Give me
both
your
in person.
breakdown. How do you see this?
So Toon is super hot and cold. I saw him in person in that very famous this year SMU game where, I mean, it was like quarterbacks were throwing 7 to 10 touchdowns each. It was literally a shootout. But the mistakes I see Toon make are definitely processing mistakes. And it's throwing to line 50. That's what happened multiple times when he played versus SMU. But he's a guy who's very odd. I saw him a couple years ago pop in. I was a huge fan of Derek King. So kind of weird to go to SMU and be a fan of Houston QBs. Anyways, I thought that Clayton Tune was a fine quarterback. I was like, you know what? That's a 6th-round quarterback. He should be a 3rd stringer. And I think that's very true. I think he's a very competent guy, good with his legs, and just overall, he's a consistent dude. Just the slip-ups are where I think he could work on, and I don't think he has the physical upside to make up for it. So that's where it's like, yeah, you're a QB3. That's where he is to me. You're talking about Jared
that's
Hall.
his up. You think that's his upside, huh? You think his upside is just QB3 for Toon?
I think so. I think so. It's tough. There's so many good quarterbacks in the NFL nowadays, and hearing QB3, you think it's just disrespect, but QB3s actually do get in work. A quarterback 1 gets injured, and then we saw Josh Dobbs competed with Malik Willis last year. I think Clayton Tune is a little bit better than that, but I don't think that he's a bona fide backup quarterback level. But of course, I could be wrong. I'd be more than happy to be wrong.
Well, no, I mean, he played in Houston in a scheme that's going to be different. There's going to be an adjustment period. He also had a tremendous receiver in Tank Dell. Nathaniel Dell was is going to get drafted this weekend. He's tiny, but he's a terrific receiver. He's going to be I think a very good NFL receiver. How about Duggan? I mean, Duggan was interesting. Sonny Dykes took the job away from him at the beginning of the year. Then the kid who was playing instead hurt his ankle in the Colorado game. In comes Duggan. And they go 12-1. He nearly wins the Heisman. They nearly win the national championship. There's something icy about Duggan. He's very athletic. He ran 4.5. He's 6'2", 210. He's from a tiny little area. They did a Council Bluffs, Iowa, right there on the Iowa state line. Give me your thoughts on Duggan. I kind of like him. He doesn't have a great arm, but he definitely seems like he's in control. He had a great rapport with his receivers. I just felt like him and his receivers were in lockstep. That's one of the things I always love to see. Give me your thumbnail on Max Duggan.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good leader. He works his tail off. He's willing to put the shoulder down. Somebody who I definitely want in my locker room. I think that his lows compared to Clayton Tune, since we're talking about him, I think his lows are lower. I think he makes more stupid decisions. But I think that his average play is significantly higher in a system versus higher level talent. So I think overall he produces better, and he does have those physical limitations, but he has the work ethic, and I think that he does have enough to make sure that, like when I talked about QB3 as Tune's probably desired peak, I think my desired peak for Duggan would be a quarterback 2. I think he can be a legitimate backup.
So you like him a little bit more. Now, where do you put, Jaron Hall from BYU? Where do you put DTR?
Yeah, so Jaron Hall is the lowest graded quarterback I've ever graded, funnily enough.
Not a Jaron Hall fan.
Yeah, not a Jaron Hall fan at all. I have him as a UDFA. I thought that his decision-making is the worst out of the 3 that we've talked about. His arm is very erratic, and he also plays hero ball. It's a weird thing that these BYU quarterbacks like to do. They like to play hero ball. And I thought that his production for having, again, an elite offensive line was simply underwhelming. And he's obviously leagues worse than Zach Wilson. He had really good receivers too. He had Isaac Rex, who's a star tight end. He'll probably end up being one of those dudes who just disappeared, but he should have been a legit NFL talent. Puka Nacua, who's a stud wide receiver, showed out at the Senior Bowl. He has guys there. It's like we're talking about Dax Milne being Zach Wilson's number 1 wide receiver, and Zach Wilson's a bust. But I mean, Dax Milne looked like an all-star. So again, especially apples to apples, he is he's just completely lower in my eyes. I just did not like the processing at all. Great athlete though. Great athlete.
Great athlete. I mean, a better runner. An explosive runner. This guy can get away. How about DTR, who played 5 years for the Bruins, and he's coming off of his best year? I mean, I thought that offense was borderline unstoppable at times this year. Now, granted, they had Charbonnet. They had some pretty good linemen.
Yeah.
He wasn't out there by himself, but DTR got into a nice rhythm last year and stayed in it much of the year.
Yeah. So I used to be teammates with Zach Charbonnet, so I got to watch out what I say. I don't want to piss him off too much. But no, DTR, before this year, I thought he might have been one of the worst starting quarterbacks in college. He just didn't, similar to the mental processing, he just did not seem to get the game of football at points. Very erratic in terms of his accuracy, but a really good runner. This year, he took a step up, and I'm very happy to see that. Maybe it was because Zach came in out of Michigan and actually was able to be a legitimate workhorse back and had a solidified role. They had really good offensive linemen. They had some solid weapons as well. But I also thought that he performed really well without guys like Greg Dulcich, who was a third rounder last year. And to me, with the weapons reduced, he still kept his game at a certain level, if not improved it. To me, that's great because it shows that he's not just purely a product of the environment around him. So, yeah, I'm probably highest on DTR out of all the guys that we mentioned so far.
And Hainer, do you like Hainer? I mean, he's a local kid, showed up at the local pro day, went to Monte Vista in the East Bay in Danville. And, he processes what he sees. He's kind of a he's a competitor. He's the kind of guy that walks into the huddle and starts yelling at guys. Now, Brock Purdy's that way.
Yes.
I remember Ray McLeod told me this year. I said, "What do you like about Brock Purdy?" He's like, "This guy stepped into the huddle the very first time, and he's yelling at guys, telling them where they need to be and what they need to do and things they need to do, and little fine points." And he's like, and he's in their face telling them, and he's like, "That's what you need. That's the take charge attitude that you got to have." He had that from the start. I see similar traits with Hainer. I don't think he's quite as strong as Purdy. I don't think he throws as good a ball, but some people think he's got a stronger arm than Purdy. Where are you on Jake? And what round do you think he'll go?
I love Jake Hainer with a passion. As a leader, he has incredible motor. The first time I saw him was actually last year. I think he got a torn ACL versus Nevada. I was watching Carson Strong that game, and I was like, man, this dude got a torn ACL and then led a 2-minute drive to, I believe, win the game. I love that work ethic. I love the fact that he could be a true leader. I'll say this, though. I don't think I would ever put him on my team unless he's a QB3 because I see the highlights of this dude. My guy has to summon every single sun god, rain god, every god just to throw a 40-yard ball. I can throw as far as Jake Hainer. That is scary to me. Like, if you cap yourself at 40 yards, and I'm not even joking, I'm not exaggerating. I literally saw a highlight of this the other day.
His deep ball hangs, I think is the phrase.
It doesn't go that far. It's not even like, oh, well, that was a 50-yard ball, but that was in the air for 5 seconds.
But isn't it weird, though, because he does have some zip in the intermediate. Like, he zips it around in the intermediate, but if he's got a deep ball and he's not allowed to step into it, it hangs way too long in the air.
Yeah, and again, I love his personality. I think he'll be an excellent locker room presence, but there's a certain level that you have to exceed to actually be able to play snaps in the NFL in terms of your throw distance. It feels like Drew Brees on his last year, and that's what scares me because we all know Mr. Check Down or Mr. Slant King is not going to cut it in modern day NFL.
Brandon Davenport here in the chat says Alex is negative. Alex is not negative. Alex is just not a homer. And so he's just giving it to you the way he, and I don't want him to bring it as a homer because that's why I wanted to have him on. Alex is not negative. Alex is qualified, and he's watched a lot of football. And you're saying, who is Alex, by the way, if you're tuning in, because this is the first time. We have almost 500 people in the room right now, and there's a lot of people going, who's Alex? Alex Barbour is our guest. He's a great follow on Twitter at Hail Mary Sports with 2 S's. He's the creator and analyst and host of Hail Mary Sports. And on YouTube, and Are you no? When do you go live? When do you do your stuff? Where if people want to check out what you're doing, where's the best place to drive them to?
YouTube all day. I post there every single day. 800 videos, over 800, which is ridiculous at this point.
How long have you been on YouTube?
Since mid 2020, since COVID. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So a little bit. So roughly almost 3. This is coming up on 3 years.
Yeah. We're hitting that 3-year anniversary mark. So pushing it, having a good time. But yes, I do sound negative when it comes to evaluations because I want to make sure people understand that these players, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these guys don't end up being starters. And I want to emphasize the parts of them that I do love, but they're not going in the first round for a reason. So you just have to emphasize, I want to give you guys a full analysis. And if I leave out the parts that could be negative, don't really want people leaving this saying, wow, I mean, if Jake Haener is that good of an athlete, that good of a leader, he did all that, why is he not being considered a day one guy? You just have to understand the positives and negatives.
You know what we should do, and I should do it, and I did this exercise when I was with the Cardinals and in the Canadian League, and that is that we would go through and look at the last 5 years in the draft and how many guys were still in the league.
Yep.
And when you realize the failure rate of the draft, you understand that the draft is about correctly identifying false favorites.
Yes.
Why? Because all these guys are favorites. All these guys are the best guys on their team. All these guys have a highlight reel that looks good.
Yep.
I was watching a few years ago the wide receiver at Iowa State, Hakeem Butler.
Yep.
And I'm watching his highlight reel, and I'm like, this guy's badass.
Yep.
I called one of my buddies who scouts out in the Midwest. He's like, Krug, his highlight reel is really good, isn't it? I said, yeah. He goes, go watch 2 or 3 of his entire games, and you'll see balls clank off this guy's face mask. He doesn't have any route refinement. He's not quick. He's not quick into his break. He's not quick out of his break. He body catches everything. I mean, he looks the part, and people are going to give him a look. And sure enough, Philly brought him in as a tight end, and teams have been looking at him at all different spots because he's chiseled. He's 6'6". He's long arms. He had great straight line 40 speed, but he, can't play. And when you see the number of guys who are college All-Americans and they were at the Senior Bowl and they look good at the Combine and they can't play dead, you realize that it's not being negative, it's being realistic to basically identify these players and identify their weaknesses. That all being said, back to Trey Lance for a second. I still think there's a very good chance he gets moved tomorrow. There's a lot of people that don't believe this. I went through and did an exercise after the draft tonight, looking at the quarterbacks around the league. And there are not a lot of openings. I mean, literally, most teams have their quarterbacks set. Yeah. This is whose quarterback situation is even murky at all. New England, if they don't like Mac Jones, if there's some Belichick Mac Jones feud. Atlanta, if they don't like Desmond Ridder, but I think they do. Tampa, if they don't like Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield, but they probably are going to go with that. And then the 3 teams that I think have maybe the best chance of trading for Trey Lance tomorrow or Saturday would be Minnesota, because I think there's a lot. That would be a very popular addition in the state of Minnesota. And Kirk Cousins is on the wrong side of 33 and doesn't win big games, doesn't win playoff games, makes a ton of cash. They're getting tired of him. I could see them wanting Trey to replace him maybe in a year. Tennessee, who I don't think owes Ryan Tannehill any more guaranteed money. And they have Tannehill and Malik Willis and a brand new regime there with Rand Carthon, who comes from the Niners. I think they're maybe a viable option. But the team that to me says screaming for Trey Lance is the Washington Commanders. They have Sam Howell out of North Carolina, who's a decent prospect, but nothing more. I mean, he was a good high school prospect. Jacoby Brissett, backup quarterback. They don't have a young quarterback on their team that you're just saying, yeah, that's the future. And they don't necessarily have a starter that's ready to win. To me, the Commanders also have Chase Thomas and Montez Sweat, who are 2 guys that I'm sure the 49ers would love to get their hands on Sweat if they could. I don't know about Chase Young based on the knee, but definitely Montez might be the perfect piece for the 49ers to add to their current line to really make a run at the Super Bowl. So I see Washington, Tennessee, and Minnesota as the most viable with outside chances of New England, Atlanta, Tampa Bay. And I do think he gets moved probably tomorrow, maybe Saturday.
Yeah.
That's just me reading the tea leaves. I have no sources. And
Fair.
I put that out there, and lots of people have pushed back. A lot of people said, hey, John Lynch has said that this is not going to happen. No, that's not what he said. I was sitting right there. Give me you're in Texas, so you and I have not huddled on this. We have not had a meeting about this. We have not had any prior conversations. I'm just throwing the Trey Lance trade question to you.
Yep.
Do you think they're going to keep him, and this is all big smokescreen, and they're going to have this Darnold, Purdy, Lance QB room?
Yeah.
Or are you with me and you believe that they're going with Purdy and Darnold and a rookie and a more clearly defined quarterback room, and they're going to move Trey this weekend for draft capital that they can turn into players immediately? How do you see the Trey stuff going?
I think no matter what, Trey's gone. I think whether it's traded this weekend or whether it's traded by the deadline when Purdy's starting to get back to health and they can maybe have a nice quarterback competition, I think he's gone. Well, to be fair, they talked about Trey Sermon being an integral part of their offense before cutting him. So I don't really fully trust.
They're say what they say, in other words.
Yeah. And to be fair, that's just part of the sports business. We see that,
we love you till it's time to go. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just got to do what you got to do in sports business. It's very unfortunate and something I don't like about it. But, you got to do what you got to do. It's business, not personal. But I do think Trey Lance is going to be going. I think that in a thin quarterback class, the demand is at an all-time high. And probably by mid-season, there will be an injury or two with a team that wants to compete. So I can guarantee you there's going to be demand this weekend and probably up to the trade deadline. So he'll be gone.
Give me some players before we let you go. And, dude, seriously, I just want to say, this is the first time we've met.
Yeah.
I love your content, and I would love it if we could do another hit with you at some point later on this weekend because you're great. You do some great stuff. I like your stuff. You have opinions on all these guys. It seems well researched. As somebody who knows personnel, I feel like I'm talking to somebody who also knows personnel. Give me a player or two that you like, and why don't we go a couple different positions? The Niners are looking for an offensive tackle. They have Colton McKivitz.
Yeah.
Give me an offensive tackle that they got 3 picks within 4 of each other, 99, 101, 102. Give me an offensive tackle that you think is going to be on the board there at the end of the 3rd round, beginning of the 4th, that you think, man, that guy fits their system. I can see it.
Yeah.
Do you see one there for them?
So
that you like?
There are 2 tackles that I think could possibly be there. That's going to be Wanya Morris out of Oklahoma. And he's just a consistent starter, someone who didn't really take the full step up, but he's certainly far from a liability. He definitely is in that tier 2 of tackles in this draft. Like you had those tier 1 first rounders, and this is definitely that day 2, tier 2 type of guy. And then a sleeper who I think he might go a bit earlier than maybe he should, but somebody who I fell in love with at the Senior Bowl, Nick Saldiveri out of Old Dominion. This dude's a mauler. I love this man. And also, I might be a little biased. Old Dominion uniforms look great. So
the white and the baby blue, and
sick. I love it. But dude,
Saldiveri did have a couple highlights in the practices.
Yes.
Where it's like, dude, look at this guy wall people off.
Yes.
He's 6'6", 316 pounds. He's from a tiny town in North Carolina, Parkwood High School. He's a redshirt junior. There's a lot to like. This guy also ran track in high school. He threw the shot and the discus. I started as a freshman on the offensive line at right tackle.
Yep.
Just a real nice player. This year, one of the best players in the Sun Belt, and then he went to that Senior Bowl and he showed that that was not too big of a stage for him. He really shined.
No, I loved it. And I hadn't seen him before that either. And I was like, who is this guy? I love seeing these players who, I'm stuck watching the big guys, right? You're even talking about Jalen Duncan as one of these guys from these bigger schools that should probably be there at that pick. But then you just see someone like Nick Saldiveri come out of nowhere. It's like, oh, like this guy is doing a really good job. He's handling the big lights very well. And I think he can certainly handle it in the NFL. And I think can be moved inside worst case scenario, and he's going to play great.
the tackles that I think are steals. I love that's one of them, by the way. Saltiveri. I love Saltiveri. I think he's and there's a couple other people that really like him. To me, when I watch now, granted, this is the one thing you don't want to overreact to is Division II future offensive linemen, NFL offensive linemen who are playing Division II. If you want to see just abuse on film, go watch a future NFL offensive lineman in Division II against Division II D lineman. It's like it looks like unfair. But this Joey Fisher from Shepherd, who's 6'5", 322, and I think some people have him as a right guard. I think he's kind of a right tackle. He's definitely not a left tackle. But this guy is just, I mean, they say he's calling his he's international house of pancakes. I mean, this guy's just seriously buries people and plays past the whistle and has that defensive mentality, and he has a wrestling background. Joey Fisher out of Shepherd is one of my favorite players in this draft.
Oh, yeah. No, I think I would love that for the Niners too, because it feels like a proper value of where Trevor Penning, like it's like if Trevor Penning was like a tier
from northern Iowa or whatever.
Yeah,
the Saints,
the kid
right?
The Saints got him. Yeah, just somebody who, like, when you talk about international house of pancakes, somebody who could just absolutely lay the wood. I love players like that, and I think Trent Williams would be one hell of a mentor for somebody who's a little bit raw but very powerful.
Yeah, a couple of super chats. Velo says, no way they trade him. Brock won't be fully back to normal until 2 years from now. Trey will also win MVP. So, I mean, this is what I'm up against. We got people. This guy's going to win the MVP. He can't even get on the field, but he's going to win the MVP. Daryl Smock says, I love you, Larry, but you're wrong. Trey isn't going nowhere. So we got just a lot of people here in the Bay who are very, very invested in Trey and what the Niners paid and his story. And they just, even though he's undefeated in the regular season and has 2 playoff wins, it's still like, hey, he ain't good enough. This guy, this guy's going to be better. The other 2 tackles I really like, I like Palczewski, Alex Palczewski from Illinois, another guy with a wrestling background. And the guy who I think is kind of the sleeper offensive tackle is McClendon Curtis, who is more of a guard. He played left tackle this year for Tennessee Chattanooga. 6'6", 325. This guy's never left Chattanooga. I think he's born and raised in Chattanooga. He went to Tennessee Chattanooga. But as far as, 6'6", 330, long arms, academic All-American. I mean, this guy's a academic honor roll, and he's got the perfect frame. And he played left tackle, and I think he's more of a developmental right tackle. Man, if you can get McClendon Curtis, I think you could be looking at, Spencer Burford at right guard and McClendon Curtis at right tackle for the next 10 years.
Oh, I mean, I love the idea of taking a raw player and giving Trent Williams as their mentor. So I really don't think, unless you're getting somebody who doesn't look like they know how to play the game of football, I think that it's one of those spots. I was talking to you, we were talking earlier, and I was saying about Jalen Carter, there's certain situations where I think players can have the highest probability of being a success, being a boom. And I feel like when it comes to raw offensive linemen, that's Niners are the place to go. You're always on the move. You have a great mentor. Like, it's just a really good place to be.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. I'm sure there's a number of guys they'd be thrilled to come to the 49ers. Yeah. All right, one guy that I really think was a good fit for them, and if they could trade up into the second round, I think they would draft him. But I don't think they can get this high unless they somehow make some miraculous move, and that's Isaiah Foskey from Notre Dame. Foskey was at their local pro day. He's an Antioch kid. He went to De La Salle High School, but he showed up at their pro day. To me, that was like, wow, maybe they promised his agent they would try to trade up for him. But who's your, you mentioned Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. I think this is one of the best, deepest edge rusher classes I've seen. Foskey, amazing. Ojulari from LSU had a great year. Derek Hall reminds me a ton of D Ford. Byron Young from Tennessee, very special. The SC kid's good. The Louisville guy, Diaby's special. Zach Harrison is interesting. McGuire from Missouri. Andre Carter from Army didn't have great workouts, but he's interesting. KJ Henry, Nick Hampton, Fajoko was the defensive player of the year in the Mountain West for the Spartans. Jose Ramirez, Tyrus Wheat from Mississippi State, Tavius Robinson from Ole Miss, Lonnie Phelps from Kansas. I mean, Baldonado from Pitt. I mean, there's a ton. B.J. Thompson from Stephen F. Austin, Incombe, Ali Gay. I mean, there's just so many guys. There's a ton of edge rushers in this class that, you know, for even after the draft's over, there's going to be some interesting guys. Who do you like? Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite day 2 and day 3 edge rushers? Who are the guys that jump out to you?
It's a loaded question. So Isaiah McGuire. So I was talking about him earlier. He used to be my number 2 player in the draft. You watch the pure tape. This man is 275, has incredible speed to power, and he also has a lot of technique. My issue with him started with the offseason. I follow him on Instagram, so I'm watching who he's working out with. I used to train at a certain facility that NFL prospects used to train at. Like, it was the first time it ever happened was like Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. It was like him, Greedy Williams, like these guys were working out there. You're working out with the best. The best players, the best prospects usually go and train with the best professionals. He really wasn't doing that. I saw the players he was working out with. I didn't really think they were of the caliber that he should be working out with. And to me, I'm like, okay, you know, that is what it is. But when it came to the Senior Bowl, it started really showing that way. I started seeing him like regress, so to speak, in his play. So that's why I think I have him now at 46. It's like, I have those reservations, but I still think the tape is the tape. He made Broderick Jones look awful. And I think that'd be a great addition if you're able to put him around a really good environment to be able to grow properly. I think you can get back to where he was when I fell in love with him earlier in the season. So that's my day 2 guy.
You like McGuire. How about day 3? You got a day 3 guy?
So
I mean, and do you agree with me that this class is crazy deep?
Yes. That's why I'm like trying to think. So a day 3 guy before he returned that I loved was Richard Jubinor out of Troy. I know I don't know if you've heard of him, but
no, but one of my favorite players in this entire draft is Carlton Marshall from Troy.
Okay.
We got to talk about him at some point.
So
Richard, Jubinor, I see him. He's 230 pounds, redshirt junior.
Yeah, no, he was really awesome. I liked him a lot. But I mean, when it comes to it, I think if Brenton Cox Jr. gets his head right, there are some reps where he is sitting tackles on their butt. And he's extremely powerful. He's 250 pounds as an edge rusher.
You talking about the Florida kid?
Yeah.
Does it bother you that he got dismissed from both Florida and Georgia's program?
That's what I'm saying.
He got busted for weed at Georgia, but then he also got kicked out of Florida's program. Do you know why he got kicked out of Florida's program?
I think he didn't necessarily get kicked out. I think it was a mutual agreement because he was like mad at the role he was playing. And it's weird. So I normally would get on a player. Like that's why I have Jalen Carter at 11, right? Like I put work ethic to a very high degree, especially maturity. But when it comes to this team, I saw Gervin Dexter have absolutely zero work ethic whatsoever on the field. Did not try at all. A lot of these Florida players looked like they were playing at 50%. I have no idea the reason why, but I felt like there was more of a culture issue at Florida than it was a personality mentality issue. So
I think that's a great call because I don't feel like they've shown up for their bowl games the last few years.
No, I don't believe so. And I think that I'm going to be optimistic and say that Brenton Cox, he will be there on day 3 for that reason you listed, being pretty much dismissed from 2 programs. But the on-field talent is worth taking the risk if you have a later day 3 pick.
That's interesting. I'll have to study him a little bit more. And I got to go check out the kid from Troy. You know, my buddy used to scout in the Southeast. He's like, Krug, you got a small school in the West Coast. You could probably skip it and you'd be fine. You skip Troy State in Alabama and you'd be fired. He's like, your ass is fired. I mean, it really is true.
Oh, yeah.
How about DBs? Give me a DB, either a safety. I mean, the Niners, I think, are going to pick 3 DBs. Yeah. I think they're going to take a slot corner. I think that's their number 1 need. I think they're going to take an outside corner for depth. And I think they're looking for a physical, tone-setting, difference-maker safety. You got to remember this. They lost Jimmy Ward. They lost Emmanuel Mosley. Those guys are true alphas. They were just not just great football players. Those guys were alphas. Those guys were true leaders. My favorite guy for them is Clark, who's a slot corner who plays bigger than his size. He's 5'10", 180, but he plays big. The other kid I like is Starling Thomas, the 5th out of UAB. Smart kid, athletic, super. To me, those are 2 of my favorites. Give me and I love Jair Brown, who's also on the Bruce Feldman Freaks list.
Come
Did I am I
on,
picking your
get
guys?
out of here. You
I like
took my
Jair Brown,
thunder,
man. He didn't run a good 40, right? He ran 4.6. But I don't care about that for safeties because it's more about instincts. It's the same way that Afonga fell through the cracks. People looking at 40 times. Give me some DBs that stand out to you that you're like, man, get these guys.
So unfortunately, the safety class is razor thin. I actually have 5 of my top 10 safeties who decided to return. So RIP to that one. But Jair Brown, you mentioned him. I was all excited to get all giddy up on him. His play, he certainly looked a little bit slower on the field for sure. But
MVP of the Rose Bowl against Utah.
He was awesome. And I was a big fan of the safety last year that came out of Penn State. Jaquan Brisker. I think
went to the Bears.
He's pretty much the on sale version, so to speak, or the clearance section version of him. Like big hitter. And what I love about him, I actually saw a rep where it was actually a comeback route. He stood right in front of the wide receiver. I could tell that he was reading the hips properly, and he jammed the wide receiver at the top of the route and shook him off his route. I love that. Maybe it could be illegal contact in the NFL, but we're seeing guys like Sauce grab dudes 24/7. I mean, at this point, you kind of have to do what you have to do. I thought he did an excellent job for especially the fact that he ran, I think, 4.58 at his pro day. Like, he did a good job maximizing his ability, and I feel like he will be one of those guys who will be a steal.
What about Jamie Robinson from Florida State?
I just said it.
He should. I mean, I loved his interview at the combine. It's just like he's like one of these guys. It's like all football, man. He's all football.
Yeah. No, I was literally saying Jamie Robinson as you brought it up. I love Jamie Robinson. He feels like an Arizona Cardinal, though. I don't know why. When I was watching him, like, this dude belongs to the Arizona Cardinals. Good player. He tested poorly as well. I think he was in the 4.5. I think he was 4.58 and tested on his 40, which is really surprising. He looked a lot faster than Jair Brown did on tape, but they tested identically. Doesn't mean that. I mean, play speed matters more than anything, but Jamie Robinson's a fun player. He's going to be more scheme specific. If I'm going to look at how I broke down his grades, his run support is absolute butt cheeks. But besides that, I mean, I think he'll be an asset. I think he's definitely somebody. There's a significant drop off after him before I have guys like Ronnie Hickman and Trey Dean, where I think they're more support pieces. I think Jamie Robinson in the right role could legitimately make an impact.
2-day 3 safeties. I got to get your thoughts on Jervarius Owens from Houston. You know, they looked at him a couple times. They did a conference call with him. They had a meeting with him. The other guy that when I watched the film, I'm like, this guy can play for me every day. Brandon Hill from Pittsburgh just loves to just truck people. And I just think that John Lynch, as one of the great headhunters in the history of the NFL, when he puts that safety film in, he doesn't want grab and drag tacklers. He wants guys who are just going to separate you from the football. And I realize that we're kind of moving away from that with all the way the league's being officiated and so on and so forth. But Brandon Hill may not be drafted. I'm looking at a mock that has him at 198, and he's only 5'10", 193, but that guy hits. But give me your thoughts on those two guys, or if you like a day 3 safety.
Yeah, so I haven't watched Owens too much in depth. Obviously, I watched him in person when he came here to SMU, so I got to see that. Never really popped off to me. Of course, when do safeties really ever pop off unless they're being targeted? So it's a valid counterpoint, but I'd probably not the best to speak on Owens, but Hill reminds me a lot of like the way Paris Ford did, that mentality of just a big hitter. I'm a big fan of Pitt safeties. I was a huge fan of DeMar Hamlin. Glad that he's doing all right. And then Paris Ford, man, I don't know what the hell happened when he ran a 4.8 40. I mean, I with a sprained ankle could probably run a 4.8 40 at this point. But, you know, I love that big hitting mentality that Pittsburgh has. Definitely one of those guys will probably be a UDFA. But I feel like he's one of those dudes who could stick to a 53. I think he has that mentality and that big hitting ability that, you know, you might want to bring in on certain rundowns, especially, and have them just crash down into the box.
You got a day 3 corner that you like? I mean, I think it's very likely they're going to go for, a couple corners, both a slot corner and an outside corner. They brought in a ton of these late round guys. Luter Jr. from South Carolina, from South Alabama. They brought in the kid from Appalachian State, Stephen Jones. They've brought in Bolden, I believe, Isaiah Bolden, Jackson State. And there's a bunch of day 3 corners. Some of them have good size to them as well, that are really interesting. I mean, I think this might be, a good draft to take some flyers on some of these corners on 3. Is there any
Yep.
that stand out to you?
Starling Thomas, we mentioned it earlier. I really like his ability overall. Very good athlete. Riley Moss will probably be day 3. I don't know if he gets taken. Yeah. Riley's been a guy who I've been a fan of since he stepped on the field. I think he honestly could be a 49er. One of those dudes where when I think of like 49ers in general, there's no logic behind it, but it's just one of those dudes that I feel I could see in a Niners uniform. Other corners, I don't know if Jalen Jones goes in day 2. I love Jalen Jones. From A&M. You like A&M, right? You were talking about it.
I'm an A&M fan, so I've watched them a lot.
There you go. So I love Jalen Jones. He's actually number 27 on my overall big board. I fell in love with this man. He tested out poorly.
Good, big corner. I mean, he's a big corner for sure.
Big corner. Yeah.
Started at Ole Miss, right? Or
I
finished at Ole Miss.
Jalen Jones.
No, finished at A&M.
Yeah, he finished at A&M. Yeah, I think he was the number 1 corner out of his class as well. He has a 6'2", 200-pound frame. His buddy Antonio Johnson, who's a safety, is lighter than him at the same height. So he's a
great kid too. I mean, I don't know. He was an academic honor roll kid. The guy's already got his bachelor's degree. He's working on a master's. I mean, you're talking about a really, really good kid.
Yeah. And I think that if you're going to consider that day 3, it's easily my favorite. I love him to death. And especially if you can scheme him properly, where basically you have somebody covering the inside, like, you could have a nice little hook zone right there with a linebacker, which I kind of trust the Niners linebackers in zone coverage. So I think you'll be able to easily get an absolute steal. I think he'll start. He could be a corner 2 or corner 1 for a team if they use him properly.
Last one. Let's talk about linebacker, because the 49ers have done such a great job at finding these undersized linebackers, and they lost Azeez Al-Shaair. He left in free agency. They couldn't pay him. And it just, you don't even play your third linebacker very much in today's game. You're always in the nickel or the dime. But there's a couple linebackers that, I always like to look at actually the linebacker tackle totals, like who actually made all the tackles, because that usually, you can look at it a lot of ways. You can look at film, you can look for guys who stand out, or you can go find out who made all the tackles and then go watch film on those guys. The 2 guys that if I'm on day 3 of the draft, I'm pounding the table for these 2 guys. One is Charlie Thomas from Georgia Tech, who's got just a total forgettable name. He's 6'2", 210. Another kid, incredible athlete, but he's also like academic All-American, really smart, really fast, really athletic, working on his MBA. I mean, this guy's something else. And the other guy I've already mentioned to you, Carlton Marshall, who's a 5'9", 215-pound linebacker. He might be Sam Mills. Like, of all the guys that I watched on film leading into this draft, that guy stood out the most. I mean, he's 5'9", he's 210 pounds, 215 pounds, and he's like a magnet to the football. He just flies to the football. He led the nation at Troy State in tackles. Give me your thoughts on either those guys or just any linebacker that you really, really like on day 3.
Yeah, so I have 2 dudes who I'm pretty fond of. Ivan Pace Jr. from Cincinnati. I don't know if he's going to be there on day 3. He's going to be around 4th selection. Yeah, he's 5'10", 235 pounds. This guy has straight up decked an offensive lineman. There's an offensive lineman, I think there's a clip in the Senior Bowl. There's an offensive lineman pulling. This guy at 5'10", 235 sits that dude on his rear. That guy's probably 100 pounds weighing more than he does. Incredible. And he was really chirpy. He got even some of our guys into a fight when we got to play them. So he's a commander of the defense. He has that energy, and he's not afraid of the ball. I love that about him. Obviously, you can mention Henry To'oTo'o. I think that when he plays, he's scared of the football, and that's what I really don't like about him. I saw him trying to go away from the ball quite a bit. But another guy I want to mention is Tervasier Dennis, speaking of Pittsburgh. In the Senior Bowl, that dude showed out quite a bit. Really good as a pass rusher as well. He's going to be a 7th-round pickup for a team, but he's undersized at that 225-pound frame at 6'1", but somebody worth taking a flyer on. He's athletic enough. He's overall just a polished enough player.
2.0 says, if Atlanta, Tennessee, or Minnesota don't make a move for Trey Lance tomorrow, I think the secret got out and the league knows that Trey can't throw a spiral. We need Levis to go to another team early tomorrow, maybe Seattle. Well, there's a lot of people that are very concerned about Trey Lance's future, and I've got a wager on it because I said they were going to trade him, and now everybody's going to hold me to it. So, hey, Alex, good stuff, man. Tell people, we got close to 500 people in the room still hanging out. We've been going for an hour and 43 minutes, so we're going to let you go. It's almost 11 o'clock out here on the West Coast. That means you're in the Central Time Zone, so it's almost 1 a.m. your time. So I'm going to let you jet, brother. But tell people how they can find you, and we'd love to have you back maybe on Sunday or Monday to to pick your brain on what the 49ers did and whose draft you thought really was successful. I love your content, and let people know where they can go to find it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's really kind. Thank you. You guys can find me on YouTube at Hail Mary Sports, and you can feel free. I mean, it says it right there. Can't miss out on it. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter as well. If you follow Larry, then we already have something where I'm already added in. So feel free to check that out as well. If you guys like the draft content, I'm going to be already jumping into 2024 stuff. So feel free to check that out as well. Going to be adding in sports betting as well as fantasy. So if you guys are intrigued with that. And I also have mediocre Madden streams because don't expect too much, but I just want to have fun. So yeah, lots of fun coming. I just want to enjoy it. Again, Larry, I really appreciate you bringing me on. It was really fun being able to get to know you and chat. And then, yes, I will more than be happy to come back and let you know all my thoughts on all the players.
Dude, excellent stuff. Everybody go follow him on Twitter. Go check out his YouTube thing. Go like and subscribe his YouTube channel, Alex Barbour, Hail Mary Sports. Alex, have a great rest of your Thursday night, Friday morning, and I'll send you a DM. We'll figure out a time, get you back on later this weekend. We really appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Have a good one, y'all.
You too. There you go. Alex Barbour. I liked him, man. I liked him. He has his opinions, but I like the fact that he's conversant and he knows the players. And he contacted me and said, "You know what? I'm all over this, and I'd love to jump on your show. I've been watching you for the last 6 months, and I think a lot of your dialogue is really cool, and I thought he was good. So I'd love to hear what you guys think because obviously the audience, people are saying smart dude, awesome stream, hella good from Mo, Dusty Gold." Great knowledge from both of you. Great info, Alex. Yeah, good stuff. All right, we have a bunch of starred chats, and I've got a few more thoughts that I want to share with you guys, and definitely want a few more of your comments. I want to know this. Who was your big winner tonight? Who was your big loser tonight? And give me your number one takeaway. What did you take away from this draft? What did you take away from round one? It could be the broadcast. It could be the players. It could be the commissioner hugging everybody. It could be, Mel Kiper's hair. It could be any angle you want. I'll tell you one that I really, non-football angle that I tweeted this earlier, and maybe some of you follow me on Twitter saw it. I'm a huge Susie Colbert fan. I just think that she's really good. I mean, think about it. She's been doing this for a while, and she doesn't come across like canned ham. She comes across like she's pretty knowledgeable. She comes across like she's pretty cool, pretty easygooing. They give her some assignments that actually I think are pretty freaking difficult. You're going to work the room for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and we're going to walk you through, and you're going to walk over here, you're going to ask them about this, and you're going to pass over to this person, you're going to have a nice little conversation with them, then you're going to come over to this table and around this person's family, and you're going to introduce yourself. I mean, there's so many people that just can't do anything unless it's like they're reading off a teleprompter or they have a script. As soon as it's unscripted, they're just like terrible, immediately awful. She's good. She's really good. And I've interviewed her before, but I mean, this is years ago when she was on what they called the Deuce, ESPN2. I mean, that was forever ago. I've always thought she was pretty good. But let's be honest. Anybody can be good for a year or a couple seasons. I mean, I thought she bust onto the scene. She was good in the 90s. It's 2023. She's still working the draft and doing a really nice job at making her interview subjects comfortable. She draws interesting analysis, or not analysis, but interesting anecdotes out of them sometimes. It just feels she's just good. She's just damn good. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about Susie Colbert, but to me, I thought she was damn good. All right, let's take a break. We're gonna play a couple spots here. We'll come back in a minute and we'll hit the chat. But who's your big winner? Who's your big loser? Who's the guy that you're hoping the Niners get maybe tomorrow or this weekend? And if you want to weigh in on Trey and what the drafting of the quarterbacks, means for him, feel free. Get in there in the chat, and we'll read some of the best chats. But first, a message from Pig and a Pickle, our title sponsor. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. This is their location in Marin.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the Krueg Show. We are 1 hour and 52 minutes into our live stream at 11 o'clock out here on the West Coast after round one of the draft. And if you're just tuning in, interesting draft on a lot of fronts. And let's see what people have to say about it. If you said to me, big winner, big loser, I'll say the big winner. I think the Colts are a big winner getting Anthony Richardson. I really do. I think Anthony Richardson's really special. I think the Seahawks are a big winner getting Devin Witherspoon. I thought that was a phenomenal pick. Witherspoon's tremendous. I thought the Eagles kind of gambled on Jalen Carter, and then they went with Nolan Smith late. They went with two uber talented kids from Georgia. We'll see. We'll see if it works out. I mean, last year they went for a couple Georgia players, and neither of them had a huge impact. So we'll see if Carter's kind of got some red flags attached to him, some baggage there, some maturity issues. But if he plays hard and they can get all the talent out of Jalen Carter and all the talent that exists in Nolan Smith, Eagles are a big, big winner. I like Jahmyr Gibbs, but, let's be honest. Detroit totally reached. Gibbs should have been a second-round pick. Campbell was probably a late second-round pick. They took both of them in the top 20. So I think, Dan Campbell and Hopkins, they fall in love with guys. But I do like what they're building in Detroit, and I love Gibbs as a player. But Campbell was nothing but productive. But I just think there's better players. And I thought those guys, they took those guys easily around before they should have been taken. I thought Tampa getting Kalijah Cansey. Granted, I'm a huge Kalijah Cansey fan, but I thought that was a phenomenal pick. I thought the Ravens, Eric DeCosta is one of the great GMs in the sport. They always play it for value, and they always seem like they get value falling into their lap. Today they needed a receiver. Zay Flowers fell to them at 22. 4.4 speed, probably the best receiver in the draft. It's not a great draft for receivers, but the Ravens had to have a receiver, and to have Flowers fall in their lap at 22, that's pretty good. I thought they were winners. So those to me were the big winners. As far as the losers, I thought Dallas, going with Mozzie Smith over Michael Mayer when, Mozzie Smith, big, strong, incredible, but he's a two-down player. So even if he's an awesome run stuffer, okay, the money down on defense is third down. He's trotting off the field. So I don't know about that. In the first round, if this were 1995, maybe. I think the Dallas is caught in a time warp. So to me, Mozzie Smith's really exciting because he's so big, so strong, so explosive. But he's not really a pass rusher. He's just a gigantic, hulking run defender. So I thought Christian Gonzalez to the Patriots, who traded back, that's great value. I think a lot of people thought Christian Gonzalez could be a top 12 pick. They got him at 17. I think that's, I thought that was a really, really nice pick by the Patriots. So those are the ones that stood out. As far as losers, Minnesota, your defense is a disaster. You already have Justin Jefferson and other receivers, and you could get a replacement for Adam Thielen in this draft. And then you go Jordan Addison in the first round, who's 175 pounds. I don't know that when you have one of the worst defenses in pro football, that's not a good move. That wasn't a good move. And I thought Kansas City totally reached for the local kid. They were looking for a story. They should have taken Michael Mayer. Could you imagine Mayer and Kelsey and catching passes from Patrick Mahomes? I thought that was a missed opportunity right there. The Atlanta pick of Bijan Robinson, I think there'll be a lot of people that pan that, but I think Bijan Robinson's going to be a 1,200-yard back as a rookie. So I don't know about that. I don't know if I'd be in a huge rush to rip them. As far as the best players still on the board, the ones that stand out to me are both the Notre Dame guys, Michael Mayer, Isaiah Foskey, then Jerry Porter. Kid, Jerry Porter, or Joey Porter Jr., I should say. Joey Porter's kid. Not Jerry Porter, the former Raider. Joey Porter, the former Steeler. But his son was a terrific corner at Penn State. He didn't go in round one. That was a huge surprise. Who else? Oh, Tucker Kraft from South Dakota, South Dakota State, the tight end. He's terrific. He could go at any point now. Riley Moss, the corner from Iowa, very, very solid pick. Jair Brown, tremendous pick. Byron Young, both of them, the edge rusher from Tennessee, the tackle from Alabama. Both those guys are tremendous. Marvin Mims, the Oklahoma wide receiver. A lot of Niner fans wanted them to grab Cody Mauch from North Dakota State. He's still there. The Northwestern freak, Adi Tamiwa Adebawore. And I say freak because his play wasn't great, but his athletic traits were off the charts. Jaden Reed, the Michigan State slot receiver, tremendous player. Julius Brents, the jumbo corner from K-State. He's super interesting. And then two guys that a lot of people like, Sam Laporta, the Iowa tight end, thinking he's going to be kind of like Kittle. He's not Kittle, but he's solid. He's definitely round 2, round 3. And Jonathan Mingo. To me, if there's one guy that's like, whoa, in this receiver draft, I was surprised nobody went for Jonathan Mingo. Academic All-American, 6'2", 220, 4.45 speed. Makes crazy catches around defenders, plucks the ball with his hands. Look at the receivers that have come out of that place. DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Elijah Moore. I think I'd look real hard at the Ole Miss receivers. And I know Mingo didn't have the best year production-wise, but, man, look at his highlight reel. He is something. Now, granted, I said earlier Akeem Butler had a great highlight reel, and he he didn't have a great career, and he's not even in the league. But I think Mingo's going to be in the league. I think he is. All right. Let's go to this. Let's go to the chat. Let's see what people have to say in the chat. Victor DeMarco. Krug, do you think we can get up in the second to get Michael Mayer? Probably not without moving somebody. You know, you're not going to trade your 3 threes and get up. You'd have to probably move Lance. Doesn't seem like it, does it? Doesn't seem like they're going to be able to get up that high. Dusty Gold says Larry just wants a kiss from Susie Colbert like Joe Namath. Larry's not inebriated like Joe was. Thank you, Dusty. Yes, you read my mind. I just want to kiss you. Isn't that his line? She's like, oh, Joe, well, thanks, I think. Did I ever tell you my Joe Namath story? Have I ever told you guys my Joe Namath story? So I'm at a radio convention, 1994 in New Orleans. I'm at a party for CBS Sportsline. It's a catered party at the top penthouse suite of the Sheraton in downtown New Orleans. It's the National Association of Broadcasters convention. I'm hanging out with a guy named Kenneth Dotson, who ran CBS Sportsline at the time. And they had this huge party, and Joe was their star guy. He was kind of like their they were based in Florida. I think he was obviously based in Florida. And so they brought Joe. He was like, the guy hey, we got Joe Namath here. Well, the party was this awesome catered party. They're making like Cajun crepes and just awesome. Just imagine being in New Orleans at a 5-star hotel in a suite where they planned for a party of 300 people and 33 people showed up. And I'm sitting at a table. This is 1994. I'm sitting at a table eating these incredible crepes that had oysters and shrimp and lobster sauce and just, all this incredible. Anybody's ever been to New Orleans, between the onions and the peppers and the spices and the Cajun, just amazing. It's an amazing food place. So I'm having the greatest crepe I think I've ever had in my life. And there's 33 people at a party where 300 people were invited because there was some other party at some bigger party at the exact same time, and everybody went there instead. So I'm sitting there with Joe Namath, and I'm eating the most incredible food. It's open bar. I've had 3 or 4 drinks. Joe's schmoozed with all 33 people, 5 times over. And he's like, hey, bro, can I sit down next to you? You look comfortable. And I said, sit down, Joe. And we start talking about, living in New York City and, being the talk of the country and the fur coat and the cover of the magazines and Raquel Welch and what it was like to be Joe Namath in the late 60s and early 70s. And I start asking him questions, and I ask him a few more questions, and now I got a few more people gathered around. Before long, it's me asking Joe questions. People are literally, there's a cameraman there who's filming it. And it was just awesome. Joe, with a couple of cocktails, just telling stories. And the funny thing is he was the color analyst at the time for Central Florida football. And, I'm asking him about Raquel Welch and being, this iconic star in the late 60s and what life was like back then and his guarantee to beat the Colts in Super Bowl III. I mean, it's Joe fucking Namath. It's one of the most amazing nights. And he wants to talk about this hot shot quarterback because he's like, so you're a former football scout. He's like, you're a young guy. He's like, well, you gotta, let me tell you all about our guy. And who was he talking about? Dante Culpepper. He was the color analyst on Dante Culpepper's college games. And this is before Culpepper came into the league. He's like, you got to see this kid. He's a freshman. He's 260. He can throw at the length of the field. I've never seen anybody with the kind of talent that this kid has. Dante Culpepper, Dante this, Dante that. And I'm sitting there asking him about Raquel Welch and partying in New York and guaranteeing that. And he's like, what was I going to say? Well, we were going to lose? I came out and said we were going to win because I thought we were going to win. I'm like, damn, it's like one of the most famous guarantees in the history of American sports. And it was just amazing. So, and I just lucked into it because it was supposed to be 300 people. Instead, there was 30, and the food was so good and the drinks were free that we were hanging out for a couple hours. So I think we were going to another party later that night. And Joe was bored talking to everybody, and finally he's like, started talking football with me, and I started showing interest in Culpepper. And then the next thing I know, we're talking all kinds of things, and just an amazing night. And I remember going back to the hotel with some of the people I was with, and they're like, dude, do you realize that we just sat at a table with Joe Namath, and he told stories about, everything from guaranteeing the Super Bowl victory to, living in New York City and being the toast of Manhattan in the late 60s and 70s. He just basically talked to us for 2.5 hours. Like, one guy's like, that was the most entertaining night I think I've ever experienced covering sports. And it was just an amazing thing. We got him to go to the show. I was there with Ron Barr's Sports Byline USA at the time, and I was the affiliate relations director. We all went to New Orleans for the NAB, and Ron got us invited to this party, and we're all there, and there was nobody there. But the booze was incredible. New Orleans. The food was better. New Orleans. And then Joe Namath. Broadway Joe. Amazing. Victor says, Krug, can we get Michael Mayer in the second round? I don't know. You're going to have to trade up and get him. I would do it. Could you imagine Michael Mayer and George Kittle in a 2 tight end offense with Brock Purdy loving to throw it to the tight end? That would be amazing. Victor says, Krug, do you think we can get Mayer in the second? Yes. No, I don't think they can get him in the second unless they somehow make a deal. I think he's gone in the next 10 picks. If he lasts beyond the next 10 picks, I'll be shocked. He's going to go between 30 and 40. And now that that Houston's out, Houston now has C.J. Stroud, so they're out on Trey Lance. Colts are out on Trey Lance. I don't know if any of these teams are really actually in. To me, the only 2 teams that really make sense to be in this year would be Tennessee, because Rand Carthon's planning big changes there, and Tannehill has no more guaranteed money on his deal. And this would be a great time for them to switch jockeys from Tannehill to Trey. So I think Tennessee does make a little sense. I think Washington makes the most sense. If you could somehow get one of those edge rushers in a day 2 or day 3 pick, I think that makes a lot of sense. Your argument would then be, hey, look, you're putting Montez Sweat or Chase Young opposite Nick Bosa on a line with Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave. No more explaining needs to be done at that point. Niner Dad 2 says, or 2-1 says, what's up, Larry? What's up, Niner Dad? Joey Nichols says, love Anadike Uzuma. Outstanding power, burst, and bend. That's funny because we're watching the highlights of him at the end of the first round, and they're like, Kuiper's like, doesn't have great burst. I don't know, man. I think he's definitely a productive player. I've watched film of him, but to me, there's guys that have better burst that were still there. PKTSDC, Larry, knowledge overwhelms me. Yeah, and it just means I don't. Think about all the things I don't know, because I'm spending all my time learning this. Val Ramos said Larry got that 4K cam. That's right. You like the 4K? Brand new 4K cam. It's nice. I'm telling you, if you ever do this, go get the nice camera. Jerry Milady says, Larry, you're the best. Your passion is awesome. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you, brother. Eric L says, story time with Larry and the hooker. Don't get me going. Daniel Shabazz, Cajun crepes. Nice. Ever been in New Orleans? Damon Bruce and I went to dinner in New Orleans when the Niners were at the Super Bowl against the Ravens, and we booked this place called Cochon, which is a 5-star awesome place. And the waitress comes over, and she's like, have you ever been to Cochon? We're like, no. She's like, well, you have to start with the fried alligator. And I'm a risk taker, but not that much with food. But I'm like, it's New Orleans. And it was a 5-star place. Now, if this had been some disaster place, there's no chance in hell. No, we're not going to go with it. But it was 5-star. It's a 5-star restaurant. So I'm like, all right, yeah, bring us the fried alligator. And they came out. It was kind of like really awesome chicken nuggets. but a little longer. Maybe a little bit more gamey than chicken, but good. I mean, like really good. If anybody's had fried alligator, it was absolutely phenomenal. Dusty Gold says, Broadway Joe, all those women in fame. Larry was giddy and wanted some juicy stories. No luck, Larry. Now Larry was smashed with Joe. We had a good time. Man. And we walked back and we were like, dude, we just spent 2.5 hours chopping it up and drinking with Joe Namath. The Car Gods. Trey Lance at the strip club again. Alex brought that up. I don't. To me, that's just normal. Maybe that's not normal that I'm saying that, but I'm not saying that I live in strip clubs. I'm 53 years old with 4 children at this point. But when I was 20, what can I say? I've been to strip clubs. I'm guilty. Convicted. I've been to strip clubs. I don't see that as like some kind of like, people, he said that like that was like some disaster. I don't see that as a problem. I really don't. I mean, now if he's there when if you're having mini camp practice or training camp practice and everybody's like, where's Trey? He's at Cheetahs. Okay, now we got a problem. All right, we got a problem. But if it's just like when he's blowing off steam, come on, man. Seriously, I mean, what are we talking about here? How we can be that critical and that uptight? The guy's 20, 22, whatever. He can't go to a strip club. Probably not 20, but 22. Mike Vaz, another great story hour with Krug. So if I get into stories, I'll be here all night. What else? Who's good in here? Kuiper is dead wrong. On what? Joey Nichols says Kuiper's dead wrong. Well, he goes on to say, I respect Mel for helping popularize the draft. Helping popularize the draft? He created a cottage industry all by himself. He didn't popularize the draft. He is the fucking draft. That's Mel freaking Kuiper, Joey. He's the guy. He's the godfather of this thing. This thing was a conference call on Monday morning then it wasn't even on the radio. And now it was on 3 networks tonight, including national network television in primetime. He more than helped popularize the draft. I mean, he created an industry that didn't exist and has defined his entire work life. Popularized the draft. He goes, I respect Mel for helping popularize the draft, but he's not spending hours poring over the tapes these days, or for a long time for that matter. Bro, Joey, you're wrong. You're wrong, man. I actually know Mel. Mel was watching. Mel's watching. I've done interviews with Mel in October. I've done interviews with Mel in December. I've done interviews with Mel in the springtime. He is dialed in on lots and lots and lots of players all year long. Now, obviously, he ramps it up for the draft, but it's not like he's some fraud. He's not. I would say he's still, to this day, the guy who knows it the best. Though I will say this, Daniel Jeremiah is really good. Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network and Bucky Brooks, those guys are good. Those guys are really good. Daniel Shabazz, Larry, if John Lynch was a young NFL player now, would he still play safety or would he be a linebacker? That's a great point. He's a linebacker, buddy. No doubt. He is a linebacker. In today's game, he is not a safety. He's a linebacker. Kid Clientele 19 says, Louis Riddick said Seattle's the best team in the NFC West. Come on. I heard that too. And nobody pushed back on that. Lou, what are you talking about, buddy? What the hell are you watching? Did you not see the Niners beat the Seahawks twice, 3 times last year? 3 freaking times. My God. Seattle's the best team in the NFC West? Really? John, did you see John Schneider at the Combine say that the Niners overwhelmed them with speed and power and talent? You got to be kidding me. I heard that, and nobody pushed back on that. Now, not that they're a bunch of Niner fans on the dais, and they're very tight schedule in the draft coverage. But what the hell was that? Best team in the NFC. Come on. They're the second best team in the NFC West. But they're not the best team in the NFC West. Come on. Come on, Riddick. You're better than that. I love Riddick, and he's dead wrong on that. I'd love to debate him on that. Tony Nagatani. In Moneyball, they said Jeremy Giambi going to the strip clubs was a negative athletic indicator. Yeah, Billy, he's been smoking that weed, and he's in those clubs, in the strip clubs. And who cares? Seriously. You could be awesome in doing that, or you could be terrible and not doing that. So it's not about that. Dusty Gold says, Larry, take the fifth. Your wife might be listening in. Good example for Kevin. That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dusty. Kevin, of course, is my son, who's the boss of the channel. We got this one from Green Glass Full. Larry is not Reggie Jackson, the biggest asshole in the history of Bay Area baseball. He was also a dick to me when I was 10 years old. LOL. Reggie's just like when you get him in a certain mood. I never told you this story, but one of the very first radio shows I ever did, I was doing a weekend show on KMBR, and I feel like I'm having a good show, and the producer at the commercial's like, dude, you got a call in here. I'm like, who is it? He's like, it's Reggie Jackson. I said, really? All right. So I go into the control room, and I'm like, hello? And he's like, you don't know me, but this is Reggie Jackson. And then I've seen Reggie interviewed a bunch, and I'm like, how do I know this is really Reggie Jackson? I was just kind of screwing around with him. And then he said a couple things about his career, and I'm like, I'm just joking, Reggie. I recognize your voice, and I know you're a Bay Area guy. He goes, I love your show, man. I love the way you talk baseball. He's like, I'd love to come on. I go, can you come on right now? He's like, sure. So we come out of the break, and it's like, hey, yeah, we're talking on the weekend. Reggie Jackson's driving to the airport, and then he disagreed with one of my points, and he agreed with one of my points, but it was like, Reggie freaking Jackson just called in, Mr. October. But then I've done other interviews with Reggie in the last 25 years, and if you catch him like in a good mood, he's awesome. But if you catch him in when he's not in a good mood, he can be very cantankerous and he'll battle you. So you just kind of know what mood he's in. I mean, this is the bottom line. The New York media is aggressive, so you got to know how to deal with them. He's figured out how to do it, so he's kind of used to the media being super aggressive. So he kind of takes an aggressive approach. But I love Reggie. Reggie was, you kidding me? Reggie's the man. Beta 1795. Larry, how many wins for the Niners in 2023? I don't even know the schedule yet. I'd say 12. I think Vegas has them at 11.5 over-under. I think it's the highest over-under of anybody in pro football. Daryl Smock. Trey's a grown man. He can go where he wants. The cat god sounds jealous. Yeah, come on. Doesn't matter. I don't care if he goes to a strip club, as long as it's not during practice. Rob C. says, I hope 49ers draft Cody Mauch tomorrow. Seriously, I could park my Tahoe between that guy's front teeth. That guy's fun to watch. He's kind of a throwback. Right tackle, right guard, left guard. Those are his spots. He'd be nice. I think he's also a second-round guy. I don't think he's going to fall to them at 99. But it's not for sure. And if he fell to them at 99, I think they might grab him. Michael says, Larry, who do you think the Niners will pick 99 in the third round, or do you think they can move into the second round tomorrow if the Notre Dame tight end doesn't get picked? I get the sense from what John Lynch said to us last Monday in Santa Clara that he likes the depth of the draft, and he's not going to try to trade up. As far as who's going to be sitting there, I think, the two guys that come to mind when I've done a bunch of these mock drafts, if you're looking for a defensive end, Yaya Diaby, who I think is a good marriage of athletic traits. He's got a great 40 time, great lower body explosion as far as he's got a great vertical, and he's got great film. Like if you watch Diaby at Louisville, he's a terrific pass rusher, and you can see those athletic dominant traits when you watch him. So Diaby would be interesting. I think it's a good marriage of athletic traits and college production, which is what I'm always looking for, and so I like him, and I like the other kid from Louisville as well, Catrell Clark. As a nickel corner. And those are the two guys that I think might be there in the third round. Though how great would it be to have Michael Mayer? Michael Mayer in the Niners offense would be unstoppable. Tony Nagatani. Krueg and Mel definitely chilling at Cheetahs in the early 90s. Come on. What else? John Mernon. More Krueg and Bruce Bourbon Street tales. Yeah, we had a good old time. And it wasn't just me and Damon. Me and Damon went out. Me and John Lund and Greg Papa went out. Me and Chris Townsend went out. We were at Pat O'Brien's in the quarter. Chris Townsend and I, and we're throwing back drinks. It's 3:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden a brawl starts right by where I'm sitting. And Townsend looks over at me, and he's like, he kind of gives me the head bob. He's like, dude, there's two guys brawling behind you. And there was somebody on a piano. It was a piano bar that's connected to Pat O'Brien's. And the person kept playing the piano. And there's guys throwing chairs. And there's people throwing blows. You would think the guy on the piano would have stopped playing. No, he keeps playing. There's chairs and glasses and stuff breaking. And so I grabbed one of the guys and pulled him back because he's kind of wailing on. It was a young guy and an old guy. Now I pull the guy back. Now the guy that's playing the piano sees there's a brawl, stops playing. Kind of the lights go on. A couple security guys run over. A couple plainclothes policemen come over. And it's a guy in his 60s fighting a guy in his 30s. I'm like, what the hell? So I got the guy in his 30s. I'm just got him holding him back. Townsend's staring right at me, laughing like 10 feet away. The cops are like, let him go. So I let him go. And all of a sudden, he's like, so what? The cop goes, what the hell's going on here? And the guy goes, he goes, that guy right there is causing all this shit and this and that. He's yelling at the older guy's yelling at the younger guy. And I'm thinking, okay, he's arguing. And the guy goes, come on, Dad. He was fighting his dad. A kid was fighting his dad. And so the cop goes, wait a second. This is your dad? And the dad's lip is bleeding. And the guy goes, yeah, it's my dad. And he's like, sir, he struck you and hit you in your lip? He's like, yeah. And he's like, well, sir, I guess I'll let you decide. What should we do with him? And there's this big pause, right? And everybody's standing there. The music stopped. Everybody's looking at these two guys, the cop, me. I'm standing off to the side. And he goes, what do you want me to do with this guy? And he looks right at his kid. He looks right at the cop. And he goes, arrest his ass. And the cop said, okay, cuff the kid and took him out. And I just started laughing. I was like, oh, my God, that's the most hilarious thing. You're fighting your dad, and the cops come, and your dad's like, arrest him. It's like, who's going to bail him out? I don't know, probably my dad. The same guy who just had you arrested is probably the guy who's going to have to bail you out. Classic moment. Beta 1795. Larry, how many wins for our Niners next year? Yeah, I'm thinking 12. 12 wins. We got this one. Ken Martin. So, Krug, what about Malik Willis? Dude, there's so many people pushing back on that whole text about I think he's going to be traded to the Titans, and I threw in Malik Willis. I was just throwing in Malik Willis because I think they're going to get another quarterback who's going to be more like a third-string quarterback. But there were so many people who were like push back like Malik Willis is the world's worst. Yeah, he's bad. He's not great. But I mean, they're not. You got to remember this. They're not looking for if they're going to get another quarterback. This idea that they're going to get a good quarterback. No, they're going to get a third-string quarterback. They're going to get a true backup, like somebody who's not even the one or the two. If they're going to move off Trey and get another quarterback, it's going to be somebody who's not very good. It's going to be somebody who's just there as the third quarterback. And Malik Willis is plenty good enough to be their third quarterback. Anyway, so many people pushing back on that. I get it. I ran my mouth. We'll see where it goes tomorrow. Mr. Bell says, I'm hoping Niners trade up for Darnell Washington. Mr. Bell, how about the Darnell Washington one-hand grab in Indy at the Combine? One of the greatest catches of all time. It's unbelievable. Daniel Shabazz, Larry's natural bouncer instincts kicked in. Look at Jason. Larry, stop, Larry. You are garbage. You are garbage. Jason. Come on, Jason. We'll have to put Jason on permanent timeout. All right. We're getting towards the end. Someone says beads or booze. It was a combination. We got this one from Skyscraper. Larry, any updates on Pig and a Pickle fan meetup? We're still talking about it. Little fan meetup. How about that? Beta 1795. I'm an SI alum, class of 2001. Go Cats. Get them Cats. Go get them Cats. Best high school in the Bay. Mark Hope. Bills did great moving up for Dalton Kincaid, but what the fuck were the Vikings and Bengals doing? I don't like what the Texans did. Any thoughts? Okay, yeah, the Bengals, I didn't love the Bengals move. The Bengals went with Miles Murphy. Now, Miles Murphy's an incredible workout guy. So, like, if you based it off the workouts, yeah. But, like, he's an edge rusher who's not the fastest. He's big, strong, and athletic. He was on the Bruce Feldman freaks list. But I watched the film. I didn't see much there. I saw a big 280-pound defensive end who's not really explosive off the edge and not really a 5 technique and a 3-4. And I don't think he's strong enough to be an interior player in a 4-3. I mean, I just see a guy who's got incredible workout numbers, who looks like a base end. That's not a first-round pick. I don't think he's going to have – we'll see. We'll see. He was very highly rated. Very highly rated. The Vikings, as far as what the Vikings did, let's go back to the Vikings pick. Minnesota went with Jordan Addison. Yeah, I mean, they have the 31st defense. Now, he was the 2021 Biletnikoff Award winner, so it's not like Addison can't play. He can play. But you have Justin Jefferson. And I know you lost Thielen to Carolina, but your defense was horrible. Horrible. You need defense. I mean, what do you think you're going to do? You're just going to outscore everybody? This isn't an arena league. So I didn't like what the Vikings did. As far as the Texans, C.J. Stroud had an incredible, career at Ohio State. But there's been many Buckeye quarterbacks who were equally incredible that didn't do anything in the pros. So I'm a little skeptical. I'm a little worried about the low cognitive test there since it was so low. Did he try hard? Did he not try hard? I mean, what's the deal there? And then as far as the next pick, Will Anderson. What is Will Anderson? I mean, like, is Will Anderson? I watched Alabama a ton, and Will Anderson is an incredible athlete. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Patrick Willis, so that's a good thing. He's clearly a blue chipper, but I think Will Anderson is a stacked backer in a 4-3. Maybe he's maybe a stacked backer in a 3-4. But I don't think maybe he's a outside linebacker in a 3-4. But he's not a 4-3 defensive end. He doesn't have the movements. He doesn't use the leverage. He doesn't have any of the techniques that look like he's an incredible athlete, but he's more like Patrick Willis. I think he's a stacked backer. And as a stacked backer, I think he's unproven. So to me, I guess the best spot for him would be strong side backer in a 4-3, but they used him as a defensive end. I mean, they literally used him as a 4-3 defensive end, and he's 245. So I don't know. He's a great athlete. I'll say that. He was as productive as any college football player there was. But that's on Bama's defense, and Bama was stacked. So I don't know, man. He's going to be an interesting guy to see exactly how the Texans use him. Do they use him at linebacker? Do they use him at defensive end? Do they ask him to put on weight? Do they try to lean him out? Is he going to be a stack backer inside? To me, that's what I think he is. And then if he's a strong side backer in a 4-3, you're playing in the sub package 70 to 75% of the time. So usually you're putting a fifth defensive back out there, sometimes a sixth. You're taking one of your base linebackers off the field. I would imagine he'll stay on the field, but at what? At inside backer? So I don't know. I'm not really sure how he's going to fit. His tape is awesome. He's a tremendous athlete. He reminds me a lot of Patrick Willis. But Patrick Willis had better instincts as a stack backer, and he played as a stack backer. This guy's played as an edge rusher. But he's so good at it that he doesn't really have to have any moves. He just gets the edge, like whenever he wants. Jimmy says, where does Mayer go? I think he goes 40, 45 minimum. I mean, at worst case, I think he goes there. I'd love to see him here because, man, he would be a great 49er. Him or Isaiah Foskey would both be great. But the way it's looking right now, I think those guys are off the board. So let's just have a quick conversation about what the Niners could be looking at in the third round at 99, because I don't think they're going to trade up. I do think they'll wind up moving Trey tomorrow, and I've stated that too many times to even count, so I'll just leave it at that. But as far as what are their primary needs? Okay, Grant and I debated this. Grant thinks their number one need is the offensive tackle. I kind of think their number one need is the defensive end opposite Bosa. You're going to start Cleveland Farrell? You're going to start Austin Bryant? Drake Jackson was inactive at the end of last year for like 2 or 3 games down the stretch. He's now opposite Bosa. I think you need a big-time edge rusher. And that's why I suggest Foskey might be the guy. So who's on? Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, Lucas Van Ness, Nolan Smith, Will McDonald, Miles Murphy, Felix Anadike Uzuma. Those guys are all gone. And that's about right. That's what they projected. Now, from what I'm looking at, the board I'm looking at has Foskey in round 2, B.J. Ojolari in round 2, Derek Hall at Auburn in round 2, Byron Young from Tennessee in round 2, Tupelodu from SC, who's sack monster. He's round as well. And then they have, I guess he'd be round 3. Yaya Diaby would be I think you're looking at the best edge rushers will probably be Yaya Diaby, Zach Harrison from Ohio State, Isaiah McGuire from Missouri. Those probably are the 3 best guys that you're looking at. Maybe Nick Hampton. I personally love Hampton from Appalachian State, and I love Fehoko, the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year for the Spartans. And then I like some of the other guys, Jose Ramirez and Tyrus Wheat, Tavius Robinson, some of those guys that are more like day 3 guys. But, yeah, I think tomorrow, if you're looking for edge rushers, it'll be Diaby, Zach Harrison, Isaiah McGuire, maybe Andre Carter, the second. Those are the guys that will be staring them in the face at the end of the third round. At corner, what are you looking at? You're probably looking at Darius Rush, South Carolina, Corey Trice out of Purdue, Riley Moss from Iowa, Garrett Williams from Syracuse, Terrell Smith, who they worked out. I think they looked at him a couple times from University of Minnesota, Jalen Jones from A&M, Jacorian Bennett from Maryland, Caillou Blue Kelly from Stanford. I think those are probably the corners, and there's a couple too besides that. Jartavius Martin, Clark Phillips, Hodges Tomlinson, who's related to LaDainian, Catrell Clark. I would say Catrell Clark is a name to look for. And if you want to watch film on somebody, my buddy Tony Pauline said that Catrell Clark is a guy they're hot on the trail after. So he's a terrific nickel corner from Louisville. Starling Thomas. Those I think the DBs, or at least the corners. And as far as safety goes, it's hard to say. Sidney Brown from Illinois, Jair Brown from Penn State, Jamie Robinson from Florida State, J.L. Skinner from Boise State. Those are the guys they're looking at there. If Mingo from Ole Miss, the wide receivers on the board, I could see them going in that direction. If they move Trey, they'll probably go quarterback at some point with one of their early picks as well to replace him. So that's my guess. And then offensive tackle. I mean, this actually kind of think that the offensive tackle. You saw the way teams moved around for the offensive tackles. They had a lot of trading. I mean, these guys came off the board. Paris Johnson, Skoronski, I thought was a great pick by the Titans. Broderick Jones to Pittsburgh. Darnell Wright looked like a monster in the highlights. Where did Darnell Wright go? Who got Darnell Wright? Bears got him. Anton Harrison. Those guys all went. The guys who could be looking at staring them in the face are Dawan Jones, who's 6'8", 380 from Ohio State. Buck Kuiper says he's his favorite offensive lineman. Blake Freeland from a BYU's got a 40-inch vertical, really explosive, athletic player, great athlete. Jalen Duncan from Maryland, Tyler Steen from Bama, and then you heard our guest talking about Nick Saldiveri from Old Dominion, Wanya Morris from Oklahoma, Joey Fisher from Shepherd, Warren McClendon from Georgia. McClendon might not be a bad guy for the Niners simply because, not necessarily in the third round, but more like the fifth round, because he's a plug and play guy. He's ready to play. He played this year for Georgia. He's really, really solid player. Now he's not 6'6", he's 6'4", but he's an interesting player for sure. I like McClendon Curtis, who's kind of a guard combination, guard tackle. So we'll see. Michael Alanis says, if reports are true about the intense interest in DTR, do we get him? Well, they'll have plenty of opportunities to get him. There's no question. I think he's probably going to go in the late fourth round, early fifth round, maybe a little bit earlier, and they will have 3 picks there at the end of the third round. I gotta think though, the first time they said they're meeting with him, okay, that's one thing. The third time, you got to think it's a smokescreen. I think they like a quarterback, but I'm just not sure which one. I like Clayton Tune, but I also like Jake Kaner. I like Jaron Hall, but the arm strength is not great. DTR was really good this year. There's a lot of interesting ones. The guy who, to me, is the most interesting in this draft is Malik Cunningham. Go watch Malik Cunningham from Louisville. I mean, he's an incredible runner. He's just a dynamic athlete. And I think he could be a real sleeper at quarterback. Probably 6th round. It's not going to be high up, that's for sure. It's going to be later in the draft. But Malik Cunningham's interesting. Really, really athletic, pretty good arm. Saw an interview that he did at one of the All-Star games. Kid sounded very mature, very grounded. I like what I heard. I like what I saw. And when you watch this kid's highlight reel of him running, he's dynamic. I mean, he is dynamic. Riddy Musich, one of our favorite texters, says Michael Mayer not too happy about not being the first tight end off the board, but if we do trade up, he'll not regret it being a 49er. Yeah, it's so funny, Riddy, when you say that, because they showed him as soon as Kincaid was picked, and he looked pissed. And also, I'll say the other thing I liked about that is he looked like he was sweating out I like guys who are engaged. I like guys who were pissed that they were passed over. Being pissed that you were passed over is a good trait. Worked for Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't happy that the Niners passed him up and a bunch of other teams passed him up. If I missed this one, Mr. Bell, I'm hoping the Niners trade up for Darnell Washington. I think we put that up there before, but yeah, Darnell's pretty incredible. 6'6", 265, great hands, super athlete, strong inline blocker, but a huge red zone target. Yeah, there's a lot of good tight ends in this draft for sure. All right, that is going to do it for us for this evening. Thanks to Alex Barbour. Check out his channel. Young kid. I was impressed. I hope you guys were as well. He's the creator, analyst, and host of Hail Mary Sports on YouTube. And I thought he gave us a lot of good anecdotes and a lot of good dialogue there. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. As far as tomorrow, let me double check the schedule for the rest of the week for the Krueg show. So we've had a big week so far. But tomorrow, we were going to visit with Vish today, but Vish is going to come on Saturday. Tomorrow is a big day because we got rounds 2 and 3 of the draft starting at roughly 4 o'clock. And then we have Warriors-Kings, Game 6. And we're going to do a post-game, Game 6. So we'll definitely do some stuff on the draft in the daytime. We'll cover all the Niners stuff, anything that happens, whether they make a move or don't. Obviously, they're going to draft some players probably at the end, but who knows how it will go down if they trade up. I'll be all over the draft from 4 o'clock on. I'll be watching the basketball game from 7 o'clock on. We'll do some videos. We'll do a post game tomorrow night. Join us in the post game. We had a blowout post game last night. We're gonna have another blowout post game tomorrow night. Red, Danny, Cy, Rye, JD, Baller. I talked to Baller earlier tonight. He's going to be in the house, so should be great. This could be it for the beam. Can the Warriors put the Kings away, or are we going to Game 7 at the Golden One Center with the winner moving on to take on the Lakers probably, and the loser going 1-2-3 Cancun? That's going to be bitter for either team. And I was asking some of the Kings fans the other night, if you're the Kings and I told you you're going down, it's like Danny would not play along, by the way. I was like, dude, Danny, you're frustrating me. I said, Danny, here's your hypothetical. It's my hypothetical. I said, you can either lose Game 6 in Golden State and have your season end there, or win Game 6 but lose Game 7 at home. Which would you rather do if you're Sacramento? And Dan's like, well, they don't think they're going to lose games. Dan, it's a hypothetical, and it's my hypothetical, and don't try to change my hypothetical. Answer the fucking question, or shut the fuck up. No, I'm just joking. But I was getting agitated. 49er Josh, thanks, Krug. Peace and love, good sir. Please find out who does the Telmetric song. See you tomorrow. I got to ask my buddy Len Dempsey. Ken Martin, Trey will start. Oh, my God, Ken, give it a break, bro. Mo says, you're a legend, Larry. Great show. We get this one. Draft is the same time as the Dubs game. Is that true? No, that can't be true. Isn't the day 2 of the draft from 4 to 7? Isn't the Warrior game from 7 to 10? I'll have to double check that. I think that's the case. Okay, we already put that one up there. Warrior games. Oh, the Warrior game's earlier. Oh, my God. We got the draft and Game 6. I don't know how I'm going to handle that. I'm going to have multiple TVs going. Josh, F the beam. Fist in the air for that. Dusty Gold. I could kiss you, Larry. Thanks for the great draft coverage. Well, don't kiss me. My wife's in the other room. She's a very, very jealous woman. We got this one, 49er Josh. Appreciate the info, Krug. Appreciate all you guys. Thanks for joining me tonight. That's going to do it. And then the star chats. Okay, we'll roll through the star chats quickly. Mayor comp Kyle Rudolph. He's better than Kyle Rudolph. Trock Talks. Watch the Pat McAfee draft show. It was great. Mad Mel Kiper is hilarious. Los D. Hey, Jesus, Krug. Philly killed it with Carter and Nolan Smith. Yeah, if they can get Carter to play. Sounds like Carter's kind of got some issues. Clarsard. Gibbs was a major reach. He is, but, man, he is a player. He is a player. Car Gods. Eagles fucking own the draft this year. Damn, that Howie Roseman's good. Joey Nichols. Nolan Smith at 30 was incredible. Smith is a top 10 player in the draft. Didn't he run like 4.38 at like 240 pounds? Great pick. I mean, that was a great pick. Eric Hernandez. Who's trading for Lance? I don't know, but I'd say Tennessee or Minnesota or Washington. That'd be my guess. Or maybe Minnesota. If I had to bet, I'd say Washington. They're the ones who need him. MF, Larry, heard Farhan say on Tolbert's show that he wants Casey Schmidt to improve his walk and strikeout ratio. He's batting .330. Bring him up. His walk and strikeout ratio. Come on. The guy was the best player on their team in spring training. How long are you going to go without him? But they are winning right now. Carlo P. Larry's so good, he makes it seem like him and Alex have worked together for years. Good kid, though, wasn't he? He was a good kid. Hey, Zeus. Larry, are you surprised the Chiefs didn't draft Michael Mayer? Yeah, I am a little bit. I thought that was a great opportunity for Kansas City. But they wanted to they're having a big floor show, and they're looking for cheers. And, when you start using other reasons to draft guys, besides how well they play. I mean, I'm not saying that Brett Veach doesn't like that kid from K-State, but I don't know, man. It seems like there's like 5 edge rushers that are going off the board in the second round that are going to be better. So, Teddy Fox, should the Warriors get Mac Jones? Oof, God. I don't think so, but who knows? Is Mac done in New England? Does Shanahan really love Mac? Why do you need Mac if you got Purdy? Isn't that going to be just kind of redundant parts as well? I don't know. I don't know. Waveware, we need Mingo. On that note, I think maybe we should finish on that note. We need Mingo. Just should I call John Lynch's voicemail at the Niners? John, Larry Krueger here. We need Mingo. We need Jonathan Mingo. Oh, that would be hilarious. All right, guys, have a great night. Go Warriors. Hopefully the Niners have an eventful day tomorrow. John Lynch, we need Mingo.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever.